What's up, everybody? Welcome to Tone Talk with Mark Uzansky and Dave Friedman. We've got an awesome guest tonight from Universal Audio and a great guitar player and gear hound, as you can see from his room, James Santiago. How you doing, James?
Thank you. Coming to you from another part of Los Angeles. We're probably just a few miles between me and Dave right now, and I'm not as cool as Dave because I'm sporting the full-on COVID haircut, which means no haircut for like 7 months. I've got like the opposite Dave haircut right now.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't have this haircut if I didn't do it myself.
See, I want to do it myself. I said my wife won't let me. I'm just take some scissors and cut it. I don't care anymore.
Yeah, so, I'll just shave it.
Yeah, just shave it. And other than that, my favorite Mexican food place, Salsa and Beer, is still open. I can get takeout. We're doing okay over here. You know,
that's cool. That's good.
I actually went to dinner tonight.
Oh,
you out or inside?
Out.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. Second time in 8 months, so I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah. No, you got to be careful.
Well, the other time I went out for my anniversary to Chiba.
Oh, is he seated? We're going to just talk about Chiba.
So he's got outdoor seating. Yep.
Oh, he did. Okay, good. Because I was kind of wondering. I'm
really quite safe outdoor seating too. It's really done pretty well.
Shit. Let me turn this down. Sorry. Yeah, because we were talking about sushi, and it's like, yeah, you just kind of got to go to Chiba. There's only one or the two other spots around here that are worth wasting your time on. You know.
I got to check.
We're going to go from guitar straight to sear tuna, and it's just going to go downhill from there. Sorry.
Yeah.
Now I'm hungry.
Yeah. So I mean, a couple weeks ago for my anniversary, I went because on a carryout night that I got it a few weeks prior to that, I was scoping this table outside, like in the corner in front of Shig's bar.
Oh damn!
And I was scoping this corner table in the far corner of the patio, like as far removed from everyone as possible. And I messaged him on Facebook, and I'm like, "Hey." Because I've known him for years now.
Yeah. Shit, yeah,
hey,
yeah.
Hey, it's my anniversary. Can I get that table in the corner? And he tells me, oh, it's number blah 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 table. Yeah, I can do that. And I go, whatever time you want me to get there, I don't care. You set the time. He said 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. There you go.
Oh,
okay.
Can you actually park there? Even in the pandemic, is there actual parking spaces there?
Yes, there's parking spaces because, well, they had a patio in the front of their place anyway, which they've expanded a little bit, and then it spills out into part of the parking lot.
Okay.
So, I mean, I just scoped that table, and I'm like going, I feel okay with that table, you know, and it was totally fine because you're in the farthest reaches corner of everything, and no one's around you. I mean,
no, and I will say, and I don't want to out him too much, but I will say George Trips, we all know and love, is probably the only guy that goes in there and actually orders like chicken teriyaki.
Oh,
because at the time he wasn't too much into the thing where usually we're like, just bring whatever you want to the table, whatever you bring is fine, and he just I'll take a chicken teriyaki. He's like, no, you got to go for it, man.
Yeah,
but.
And I went and I had a makase, and it was just, cost me a fortune.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the one thing we haven't had.
I mean, really quite a bit of money.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You can get in the couple of $100 range easy when you're going down.
Yeah, maybe more.
No more, but sorry, Mark. We'll talk about gear at some point.
Oh, that's all right. I mean, I was going to ask, have you ever been to Nobu?
Yes.
How does Nobu compare to Chiba?
I haven't been to Nobu, so I can't answer that.
You know what? It was neat. It was a really cool experience.
Okay.
The food there is really interesting, and that's what I get for watching too much of that Iron Chef stuff at night. So it was great, but and it was mind blowing. There was a sea bass thing they do with the whole thing. It was really amazing. But I'm just as happy finding a weird place in a strip mall. I don't care as long as it's good. And really, consistency says Chiba's kind of still the classic place around here. Honestly,
cool. Yeah, I went to Nobu in New York. And
that's the one. That one.
I was let down big time.
Oh, that's a bummer. Shit.
Yeah, I mean, I ordered like this Alaskan. I thought it was literally an Alaskan king crab roll, and that sounds like it's going to be big, right?
Yeah.
And it was like this big, this little roll on a plate, and that was like $50. just for that. And it was,
Yeah, that's Well, the difference in it, yeah. I mean, yeah.
it was bad. It just was like, really? I ordered 3 rolls, and that just cost me $150, and I need many more rolls.
Fish will only get so good.
Right.
Obviously, the preparation is, but in traditional Japanese, there's not all that much in the preparation other than the rice and everything.
Right.
But I mean, is Nobu fish better than Chiba fish? I don't really think so. Is their presentation different? Probably. Well, maybe we should talk about gear.
I know. No. And I will leave you with this so you don't feel bad, Mark. I will say I had one friend come into town, like, we're going to Chiba, and they weren't that big on sushi. And after we ate it at Chiba, he looks at me and goes, can you take me to like a burrito joint or something? Because I'm starving. Literally after going to Chiba, I had to go through a little taco stand burrito place off of Van Nuys Boulevard there. It's like, there you go. Sorry.
They just didn't order enough.
They didn't order enough. It was like, nah, it was not what they were wanting there. I was good, but so don't feel bad because it happens, man.
I mean, I love sushi and I'll order a ton, but it needs I need to eat a lot,
Yeah.
So I don't know for me, but hey, we already have a super chat. I think it's a question.
Just trying to get us to shut up.
Yeah, no more sushi, guys.
Everyone's hungry. Yeah.
Ja Turi, thanks for the super chat. We appreciate it. Dave, kind of want to buy one of your 100-watt heads just because. Already have a Synergy Syn 2. Might buy one of your modules instead. Opinion tone wise, head versus module, all other variables the same.
Well, the question would be, on your Synergy deal, what are you going to use it into? What power section are you going to use it into? It will be
if he has a Synergy,
like if you were to use that preamp of, say, one of my preamps into my power section of my head, it sounds virtually identical within a few percent of each other. If you are to use it into a different power section, well, that changes, so it's going to be different. Good, bad, different. It doesn't, could be cool combination, could not, could sound awful. Probably won't sound awful, but so I'll tell you, get the head.
Yeah.
Probably. If you want the real, here's how I always look at stuff, like even like I've done a lot of like studio guitar recording and getting sounds for people in studios and things. And, and they always like, what should I get? Should I get? And, I go, well, you should get the real deal.
Yeah.
Whatever the real deal is. I mean, like if you want a chorus ensemble, roll-in chorus ensemble pedal, get the pedal. Yeah. Don't get the plug-in. I know, James, that you guys make great plugins and it's great. But honestly, I go, if you have the money, try to get the real thing that you really want, not the simulation of it. And now I understand that my amps are simulations of some old stuff. A lot of people can't afford older stuff. And mine do more than the older stuff. So it could get you that sound, but it could also get you 5 other sounds. So
and it's more reliable.
And it's more reliable, and you don't have to do a massive service when you first get it. And I mean, I routinely get amps for people that, the vintage amps, and it's like, well, okay, well, we got to put filter caps in, and 5 of the caps in the board aren't mustard, so we should try to find some original ones if we're going to restore it. The tubes, one of your tube sockets is toast. Oh, one of your preamp tube sockets is toast. Might as well replace all of them at this point. And then it goes down. It opens a big can of worms sometimes.
We've got another question about the Synergy. Dave, the Synergy Plexi module absolutely nails early EVH. Been ripping Panama all morning. I have my preferred setting. Curious, how do you have that set for tone while working up that circuit?
You know what that sort of is that is sort of I would call it one of Jose's low gain sounds, but it's a little different, as in you have a bass channel and a treble channel with a boost stage in front of it. So, and they're blendable, infinitely blendable. You could do that on an old Jose amp, but you had to pull something to blend them. And this is kind of like a highly idealized boost stage in front of a stock, bass and treble channel deal. So, I would think that you'd probably, if you're looking for that tone, you want the gain on 10 on that thing, I would think, almost on the treble channel. You can blend in the bass channel, the normal channel, to taste, depending on how much, flub or low end you want out of it. That, again, depends on what you're going into. So, and then as far as EQ, I mean, you're going to EQ that. You're not going to turn everything on 10 with that. So you're going to, bass might be up kind of high, if not all the way. Mid, it might be, I don't know, half. Treble might be at half or something. And that'll get you kind of in the range. Again, it's hard to say because I don't know what you're going into with it.
Mm-hmm. And, going back to the other guy's question, Jod Turi, I've heard a BE module through. I have a BE. I have a Syn 50 head, right, and run that into the same cabinet. And I heard a BE module compared to my BE 100. And quite honestly, I agree with you, Dave. Get the real deal. Get the amp. I mean, it sounds really good, but the amp sounds much better, especially when you start turning it up really loud. I don't know.
Well, here's the thing about comparisons too, and I get people that say things like that sometimes, and I'm not discounting what you heard, Mark, but until you get the amp switcher rocking,
yeah,
and
you're right.
You do blindfold tests, man, it's
an eye opener. You're probably right.
It's funny. It's funny once you do that, and then you actually turn the knobs to match the tone, because you might have to turn the knobs differently. And once you do that, then you're like, oh, maybe it isn't that different. It's shocking. So I always look at it whenever I compare anything to anything. It has to be with an amp switcher in real time. And if you're really trying to fool someone or work with someone on something, you have them turn their back. And then you dial it in and you go back and forth and you dial it in some more, you go back and forth. And if they guess wrong, like 5 times or something, or if you have them guess 5 different times and more than half of those he's guessing the opposite, then it's the same.
Yeah, we can, that's pretty much my 10 hours a day, and I can that's where, just so everyone knows where Dave's going with that is absolutely correct. And if you do it by yourself, it helps to print all the stuff, whether Pro Tools or Luna, whatever you have in a DAW, and then go away for a day and come back with fresh ears too. And then so you're trying to just, because what's going to happen, you're going to look at this stuff and go, well, I know that's the vintage one. And I've just done this with literally with every piece of gear. I have these giant sessions with everything AB'd. Anytime I get something new, I AB it with all the original stuff. And you'd be surprised that it's like, well, do the knobs exactly match? No, but there's also tolerances. No knob is going to match the same thing. So you push the presence here, the treble there a little bit. You're like, well, crap. I just have, this amp just wants to be doing something different. That pedal or that guitar or that pickup or those strings. It goes pretty scary. There's a lot of scary stuff around here that when you're doing that. But exactly what Dave said, if I'm going in amps, I have a giant 8-head switcher. And I will, if I'm playing it in real time, play, switch, different cabs, switch. And a lot of times I'll just grab a looper pedal and then take myself out of the playing part and just put it in a looper, put it in front of the amps, and just listen to the amps too that way. And then print it all on the Pro Tools, number it, and then you're sort of faking this double blind kind of scenario, because the whole trick is, if you make a mistake picking which one is which enough times, then that's your answer right there. It's like, okay, you're what we call it within a unit to unit variance of like, well, maybe this is a reissue or this is supposed to be this. Because here's the thing, I put 5 Marshalls in a room, none of them are going to sound exactly alike anyway. So you always have this little bit of slop, this acceptable sort of slush and everything. And it also means people have to do their own homework. So what works for one other person doesn't work for me sometimes. And so, yeah, that's a whole can of worms. And
there can be some feel variables in it all too, how it feels on your fingers. It might sound identical, but maybe it doesn't feel identical.
Yeah, there's that whole, and actually the Variac's a good one, because It's like, well, things can sound fizzier if you're not rebiasing the amp and turning the volume down and things get squirrely, but it actually starts to feel better because you're getting a little compression.
Mm-hmm.
It might be feeling a little easier to reach when you're tapping or doing anything. So there's the other part is absolutely there's times like, oh, that feels right. And if you're just listening, you do miss that. So I always tend to listen to the examples, do scientific measurements with all this other tools I won't even bore you with, and then I just have to play the stuff because you have to do some kind of combination of those three things, you know. And then, you know, it doesn't matter what gear it is, because I hate when people are like, well, that didn't sound that great. Well, did you use it right? Did you know what it was intended for? Did you hear it for yourself? So, you know, I always try to give every piece of gear a chance. You just never know what tone's hidden in something, you know.
Yeah, or how to switch the switches to make it sound a certain way.
Yeah, what combination of pull, mid, exactly.
You know, because here's my BE Deluxe amplifier. Okay, which way to switch the switches? Well,
I mean, the classic one being dumbles sound like shit if you don't know what you're doing. That's straight out, you know. Mm-hmm. If you don't know how to set those amps right, or it's not for you, that's not a fun amp to play through. They can sound really bad. It just depends on who it was made for and the combination of mid, deep, the boost, all that other stuff. So yeah, but that's half the fun. If everyone just gave us the answer, that wouldn't be any fun. It doesn't give us a reason to buy new amp heads,
right?
You know, or pedals.
Very true. By the way, you got your whole setup there, which is actually working, which we can hear, right?
Yeah, I've been going through some Echoplex preamps and actual picks. It's just kind of nailing down a few. I've been trying to actually personally been changing picks recently a lot, and in fact, I do the string changing gauges and heights a lot. But and by the way, some
current favorites.
Yeah. Well, I have everything. Well, funny enough, lately it's been thin picks. And I was going this way for a while. So there's just I've been using regular Tortexes lately. But I will say the reason is if I'm testing some piece of gear or evaluating something, if I use a really odd pick, that's not good either because it's not reality. So sometimes you have to, well, what if you use a stock, blah, 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 stock Strat, 10s or 9s with nothing too special, and then get a reality check. So what I've been doing is, and I'll go over what's in this little tray here in a second, but finding that for some of this stuff for the amps on 10, lighter gauges and lighter picks sound more aggressive and have a punch. And I think I should talk to Mark about this a little before, is it's really easy to hear on a rhythm track the difference between this, as an example, something like a thicker pick, just a thicker nylon pick compared to just a thin Tortex, or what would be something like this from 1982.
Right.
That
medium or thin?
Yeah, really. I mean, this is like so thin.
So that's an actual thin, like Fender style pick, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely thin.
Not a medium though. No,
I don't think it's medium. And what I did is, which I literally called the guys at Dunlop. I said, just send me all the different gauges and all these different models, and trying to find a modern equivalent. So there's, you know, the different old Texas. This is how bad it gets. When I get down a rabbit hole, it's like, no, I want to know exactly why. Why does it sound like that? Is it repeatable? Is it consistent? Like, was there some other thing? Because tone is in your hands, but what's the one thing in your hand? It's still a pick. There's still a string gauge. Mm-hmm. You know, so the two things that you can wrestle, which I think I did this for you too. Like if I take two picks and I don't tell you which one's which, and even through the actually I'm using the wrong guitar. We should put the grandpa guitar away and use something a little more modern, and just see if anyone out there can hear the difference as well. Oh, I won't even tell you what pick is what.
It's not the greatest audio through the streaming thing.
It's going to be horrible, but it's funny. I think it's so noticeable that should, even in the crappy audio, come out like.
I heard yesterday.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Sure.
The first one was much brighter.
That's literally, and I'm not playing very well, but that's the difference between a really thin pick and
What was the first one you did?
that was probably just the Jazz 3, just nylon picks.
Yeah, it was very bright.
Yeah, just kind of.
But for that particular song,
For that song,
for Van Halen, that really kind of works.
Yeah.
it almost works, I think. But then you hear how he would attack this.
And then that doesn't work.
And that doesn't work, yeah. And then and I'm trying not to use him very much, but then we use his actual pick from that period. Compared to
Oh yeah, the other one just sounds like how do I want to describe it?
yeah, there's
Gushier?
yeah,
Less stumbling over the strings?
yeah, there's a thing, and we can go into this rabbit hole because and I will tell you that this was kind of messed up. Is probably about 20 years ago or so, I ended up doing some stuff with Ty Tabor, and I asked because I thought the It's Love tune with that's a great riff, that's a great sound, just a killing tone, even though it's not that whole thing. And then I played his guitars. This was at his place. He was living out in Texas somewhere. And I played his guitar. I was like, dude, these have the lightest strings. And then he made it worse. He's like, wait till you see my pick. And he pulls out the thinnest pick I'd ever seen. And his reasoning was that he could just dig and play the strings really hard and it wouldn't put that much force and pull the guitar out of tune. Right. And it sounded bigger.
So I've had this discussion before when we were talking about Eddie and stuff. And I go, originally, man, that was like 9 to 40 gauge string.
Yeah, totally.
9 to 40 at E flat.
Yeah, E flat.
And
yeah.
Now, if you string 9 to 40s at E flat and then play it, you will totally understand what James is just talking about.
Yeah, and this is exactly what this is. This is 9 to 40 E flat right now.
Yeah. So the lighter pick makes total sense. Just like I had this kind of epiphany. So I have one of the Fender Wolfgangs that he signed for me and stuff. And I picked out a flat top, a Japan reissue, the Japan issue flat top that then was made in the custom shop. The rest, it was put together in the custom shop. I wanted a flat top. That's just what I wanted.
Yeah.
And what dawned on me is, set up by Chip Ellis, and what dawned on me was, okay, this guitar has small frets, and it's it was 9 to 42 gauge, right, at tune to E flat. Now, people say, well, why the small frets? I go, why the small frets? Well, that makes sense, because if you had big ass frets on it and you fretted it too hard, you pull it right out of tune.
Yeah.
The small fret with the light string's easy to bend. You don't need to get under it as much and put as much manpower into it. So it's easy to bend. It won't go out of tune. And then coupled with a light pick, or at least a medium pick, it makes total sense. It all scales.
Yeah.
So if you're going to use high actions, huge frets, 11 or 12 gauge string Stevie Ray Vaughan style, the light pick is not going to work.
No, dude, that's just a disaster.
You're going to need to dig into that harder.
Yeah, it'll eat that pick up in a second too.
Yeah, I mean, it'll munch it. So it all scales.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. Also, the stock Marshalls cranked on 10 kind of thing. The lighter the gauge of string, the less low end content. So the tighter the tone that you're going to get, it's not going to be as flubby sounding. And that's part of it all too.
Absolutely.
Along with the light pick, as you just kind of proved really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, the light pick, this setup right now, and again, there's nothing special. There's no distortion pedal. It's a guitar straight to head on 10.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, that's a huge sound. But again, it's I'm playing the tiniest string for me, tiny, considering 9's a half step. I feel like I'm on 8s. You can breathe on this thing and make a note. But for some reason, the light pick, which again, maybe there's some connection because it works, and then or no pick at all. And with the setup you end up there having, which is it's very Holsworth, 2 humbuckers and a Charvel with light strings and a light touch. If you take the pick away, you sound like Holsworth, which I'm pretty sure that period of Ed from 82 to 84, he was just hanging around. Yeah, you can hear it as his playing on 1984 is a little different. It's a little more, a little more Allen. Yeah, I mean, just the and I'll do well. We'll just say we'll put on chorus post, and when you hear Ed do it, like that kind of stuff, that's like right off the first IOU records. But again, Ed's difference was his personality coming through. And I'll just show you the exact thing. It's pretty funny to just change your hand and get rid of the pick to go from, and then don't use any pick at all. And you end up getting that Holsworthy and sort of growl on the notes. But again, you have to have strings that are like paper thin to do that. And that's a whole different guy. I've played his guitars, and he was an alien too. That guy was just amazing. I would have loved to hear more of Ed playing with Alan, those two doing stuff. Other than that GIT tape, I think it was floating around.
Yeah, it's funny. I've always used medium picks, and I always used Fender-based medium picks.
Oh, sweet.
So just the classic,
Yeah.
And specifically, my favorite would be the confetti ones.
Oh yeah, those are awesome. In fact, I should show you this. There's
Fender confetti picks, and you know what? Another good bonus to the pick generally is, no matter where it falls, you can find it.
Yes, and I have some of those. So I have some of those that are similar. Have more of those kinds of weird patterns and stuff like that. So we should see if anyone recognizes. So Dave, here's what happened here is for everyone else to see. So this whole tray is all stuff that Ed was giving Dweezil back when they were hanging out together. So this is all 82 to 84 stuff. So we have this one in white. And then he said there was another one which looks more like a real sort of Fender.
Yeah. Yeah, tortoise kind of thing, right?
Totally tortoise. It's got his funny enough, I'm not sure, but this actually has his name and does say FUCK in there. You can see that a little bit. Yeah, so there's a couple of those. Again, they're both really thin. And then this apparently came from Sammy when he joined the band.
Right.
And this, I'm not sure what he's trying to say there, but I'll just leave that up to you. Thank you, Sammy.
I'm not sure.
Not sure. We're gonna leave that one alone.
I think I'm pretty sure what he.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of figuring that one out. And then, there's some other odd stuff he found, which again, you got to give it to this dude. A weird oddball, like 90s Nuno Betancourt pick, which is cool. So yeah, he found a bunch of this stuff because I'd been asking him, like, dude, do you remember what his picks were? He's like, oh, I can do you one better. We brought him over last week. So
how cool is that?
Yeah. So yeah, he's not getting these back. These ended up being gifted. So if he wants them back, sorry.
Too late.
Yeah, it was some combination of, okay, now show me Mean Streets and give me the pick. There's my birthday present from you. Thank you. And
awesome.
Yeah, and there's only so many people who are probably as big a fans as Ed who actually got to spend as much time and actually make Ed show him stuff. So
right.
So he's a good resource for that stuff.
Yeah, I bet.
But sorry, we could talk about Ed all day because I'm definitely back in that zone now.
Oh well, I think we all are.
I think everyone, the world is still in that zone right now. I'm kind of going back and listening to all the records. Like I'll take a trip down to the factory or something, and it's like, which one am I going to put on today? I put Foreign Unlawful Carnal Knowledge back on, and pretty sure Soldano's different sound. Still cool though. Still some great baritone in the middle of some of those tunes. Yeah,
great stuff. Different, you know.
Yeah. Really good stuff. By the way, going back to our question from Bulldozer Guitar, the Plexi module he's playing into is JVM 410H Satch Power section. Bright gain only on 7 on the middle, bass gain on 0. Sounds
Okay, it's fine.
Okay.
I mean that power section at least is sort of a Marshall-esque, kind of deal. So it's fine. Should sound pretty good.
I know we have another one that I missed.
Dude, I feel like I should have read all your manuals and at least help with some customer support here. I'm totally slacking.
Yeah, no, I'm customer support, period.
The hardest gig in the world. No one realizes that,
Oh, God, yeah.
Jacob Cody, thank you for the super chat. Hey, James, huge Ox fan. Me too, by the way. Really love the early Lukather tone on the Boz stuff. Fat mids, breakdown, dead ahead. Is there a factory Ox preset that would be a good starting point for that vibe?
First off, yeah, I love that stuff too. And if so you put me on the spot, I'm pretty sure that would have been Paul Rivera Deluxe's probably at that time. Dave, you remember that? I'm pretty sure in that period he was still.
What year was that?
Dude, that's like late 70s still, isn't it? Breakdown Dead Ahead, where I think where he's doing the yeah. That whole
Good
thing.
question. Deluxe, maybe.
I'm thinking the Deluxe,
maybe
modded Deluxe, but the question. So now we got the amp. I'm pretty sure it's that because even Rosanna, that solo was probably still a modified Deluxe, wasn't it?
No. By the time they were recording that stuff, I think he had. Oh, that's a good question.
Because that's still 83 when they were tracking that. 82, 83.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. So the question being, so we're gonna just go down the rabbit hole. Was Luke using an EV12L like Paul was putting on a lot of those amps?
Yeah, maybe. That'd be a guess.
Yeah. So yeah, my guess is EV12L, which high efficiency speaker. Don't confuse it with a JBL D120, which is razor blades. That's a even though I consider them as high efficiency speakers, no, that cone is
the other head speaker.
Yeah. Oh fuck. Yeah, which is great if you can blend in like 20% of it in your mix, but oh god, don't stand in front of that thing when it's distorted. Oh well, we might as well go there. That's a horrible speaker for distortion if you're not careful. And I did write a preset based on the Altex that Randy Rhoads used to use, which can be the worst thing ever if you're not careful. That's a really specific personal tone for Randy, and I don't know how he got away with it because it works for him. But that's a super nasally tone when you hear those records. Sorry, now we're going left on all that stuff.
I mean,
I'm not a fan of Randy's tone.
I'm not a fan of Randy's tone on record. I've heard live stuff that has been a lot better. I don't think that was captured very well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard because his playing was great, but yeah.
And again, could you picture it at this point now without that tone? And
no,
because it's so unique to him and it's so ingrained in us now. So
it comes back to, is there a terrible tone? I don't know if there is a terrible tone if there's something unique about it,
Yeah.
I've heard stuff I don't like. I'm like, that sounds horrible, but somebody else could make use of it and like, oh, that becomes a classic tone now. So that's why it's hard to play a piece of gear and go, well, that doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work for you, but then you get someone like the Edge who can make something unique out of it. And, and I know I'm avoiding the question about how do we get Lukather's tone on that record still. Don't worry. I'm not that old. I do remember the question.
I don't quite know what he used. Yeah,
my guess is EV12Ls, and I bet if you I could probably do a little more research into it and maybe send a note to you guys. But my guess is we could probably use like a 414, which if we're going to go down that rabbit hole, a 57 is really pointy and punchy in the mids. A 414 can kind of give you a little bit more of those flatter because it's got this high end and low end boost. So if you put a 414 on a Celestion, you get a little bit more of that hi-fi flatter sound. And that all comes down to, we talk about speakers, which that's a whole other topic, is you can have a great amp, but the speaker is probably the number one factor in the overall personality of that amp. And
absolutely.
Yeah, if you get the wrong speaker with an amp, dude, that doesn't. I'd almost rather have a whole bunch of different speakers and one or two great amps because I can fake those amps into sounding like something else with a different speaker. And then you tack on the mic part of it, where to put the mic, condensers, U67s, 57s, 121 Royers. And really, with a good mic selection and good cabinet choice, you can probably fake a lot of other stuff. I know I'm still avoiding the question. I know. I'd probably pull up a V30 speaker and maybe use like a 414 because it's going to give you that modern high end that really is missing in most vintage Celestions. You don't really want that softer roll end because the EV12L is not that bright, but it's definitely got more of a high end. It doesn't, and I'll just tell you the frequencies. A lot of Celestions will hit this 2 to 3 or 4K thing and they just fall off the hill. Where those EVs and JBLs and Altics, they reach 4, 5, 6K. You start getting past that, which unfortunately for distortion is where all the bad stuff can live if you're not careful. That's a really horrible answer, dude. I think I might have just made it worse for you. But I love that. But I love that Silk Degree stuff. I think Lando was killing it. You know, he probably didn't have much other than modified deluxes with some extra boosts. Could have been his 59, maybe. Just cool. Killing. Yeah, we could talk about that all day too. We'll start talking about wet, dry, wet, and then everyone will fall asleep on us.
Yeah, we've talked to that ad nauseum.
Burst of Tone, thank you for the super chat. By the way, before I get to your question, Burst of Tone, I just want to mention last show. Where is it? I know I wrote it down. The last show we did dedicated to Ed. Here it is. And we took donations, right? And we said we would split them between Mr. Holland's Opus and St. Jude's Children's Hospital. So in terms of donations, I tallied it up, and it was a total of $820.47 after a couple of translations for, from Canada dollars and stuff like that, and UK and stuff. So, but once all that money clears next month, and YouTube takes their part, and we got to deal with taxes and stuff like that, I will be making the donation and posting it for everybody to see what we donated to those charities. So just wanted to be transparent, let everybody know what we're doing with the money that you guys gave. And we thank you for it. Really.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, Burst of Tone, question for Dave. Already owning a small box 50, which boutique Plexi style amp should be considered? Your thoughts on the Suhr SL68, for instance?
Suhr SL68 is a great 100-watt Plexi style amp with a built-in variac. I mean, it does what it's supposed to do.
The only thing that it doesn't have, what I heard that it doesn't have a bright cap, right?
Well, yeah, but
Okay.
that's not going to make or break it. If you're turning it on 10, forget it. It doesn't make any difference
anyway. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Okay, that's true.
So it doesn't really make any difference then anyway. And to be honest, it's almost more useful without it, because if you're turning it down to say 6 and you want kind of that just kind of classic Marshall cranked up partway kind of thing, like like a classic record would be, such as Free or something, or or Bad Company or things like that. AC/DC, you don't want that bright cap because that's going to sound like a brittle piece of junk. That's like 5 or 6. It's like
that's true,
like pretty much unusable. So it's actually better if it's out. Now you can on those amps put them on a switch. Put a push-pull pot or something. You take it in and out in case you want it for something.
Okay. Ben Coombs. What's up, Ben? Check out his channel, you guys. He's a good dude.
Awesome. So let's talk about James's history a little bit, since we delved into this shit.
Yeah, and we do that, and I will apologize. I don't want anyone to be mad about the Randy, because Randy is a fucking genius, because I wish I could play his tone and make those records. So I'm going to say that right now. I know it's a hot topic, but I'm with you guys, and we'll end that discussion with, I did make a tone based on Randy's sound, and I just found it on my screen here. So just for everyone to hear what we're talking about, if I don't touch the amp, what's the difference between a Randy back end and an Eddie back end with the same head on 10? So then we'll let everyone decide what sounds cool. So here's our And here's the Randy back in. So what if we play Randy on Ed? Still cool, but like to your point, Dave, you need that tone to sound like that now.
Yeah.
So why it's not my tone for me? If you don't have that tone, you don't have the Randy Ed. So there, I'm just putting it there because that dude was bad. He was a killer.
Oh,
dude.
he was amazing. I loved his. I mean, those albums are fantastic. But when comparing the tone from my preference between Ed and Randy, I would always gravitate towards Ed's tone.
Ed.
That's just my thing. You know, people can
or almost anyone else.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to make sure we address that because I love all of this stuff for different reasons. What I feel more comfortable on is, again, Marshalls on 10, old Celestians, and I'm pretty happy, you know. And but I think so. If we go where Dave went, so we're going to be reaching back a couple of decades now to figure this all out.
Yeah. So okay. Well, we could start a little bit. Let's start when we first met.
Yep. I would say it had to have been 90s, probably just doing stuff for Guitar Player, coming to LA a little bit more. NAMM.
No, it wasn't that. It was
before that.
It was somewhere up north, and there was some sort of thing where they invited.
Oh, amp shootout, probably.
Yeah, something like that. Guitar Player thing, right?
Yeah, probably. Yes, you're right. See, that's thank you for reminding me because you know all the shows, the gear hangs, they all blend together after a while.
Was it the James Lugo thing?
No. This is like early 90s.
Yeah, this is 90s. Yeah. So just for everyone to give you a little history, again, we have to remember pre-internet, where if the only way you could really see if an amp was any good was you'd read a gear review. You'd pick up Guitar World or Guitar Player and you'd hope that whoever reviewed it, liked something or had your style or taste and what they liked. But then at some point, the guy who hired me there, Art Thompson, who was just a saint of a guy, just a great dude. He's like, well, what if we just start having these roundups where we'll just get every 50-watt amp made or every 100-watt amp made or every some guitar. We'll go to SIR in San Francisco and invite all the people who designed the gear. Mm-hmm. And so you'd end up and again, this is before anyone knew what these guys were like. So you'd sit in a room and see Stevie Freyet yelling at Reinhold Bogner, yelling at Richie Fliegler, who at the time was from Marshall before he went to Fender. And you put all of these crazy personalities in a room for 3 fucking days and just watch the sparks fly. I mean, if anyone remembers Bruce Zinke was at Fender at the time, that guy was brilliant and also crazy. I mean, you have all of these. So we were around for a lot of that stuff. And you're right, Dave. I kind of blocked all of that out. But So yeah, that's where I kind of got my
what year that was, I don't remember, but it had to be early 90s.
Early 90s, yeah, absolutely. But those were fun days because you know what? Who else would say, "Hey man, what's our job this week? We're going to go to SIR and we're going to have Joey Brazer bring down Dumbles. We're going to have Marshall. We're going to have every amp company just send their best stuff and then come down and duke it out in a room." And I mean, who wouldn't want to see that now, even honestly?
Of course.
And some crazy shit went down. But I think it was during that period of just, working that scene. And I'm not sure everyone realizes how small this industry really is. Everybody who's been around long enough as Dave, we all know each other. We've all worked around with each other, so it's pretty wild to think. And I will tell you another funny story. Is the first time I met Jamie Kime was probably through you, Dave, because he was probably just working in your shop on the bench.
Oh, yeah.
Just, somewhere back when it was probably still at Browers, I would guess. In the back there. And that's still 90s too, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, that was a little more mid-90s.
Mid-90s? Yeah. That's what I'm guessing.
So I remember that was well, the next thing I remember, and there probably was stuff in between. When did you start the online magazine?
Yeah, okay, so there's a funny one. Yeah, so we can talk about that. Yeah, at some point in the 90s, the magazines were starting to focus less on gear and tone And the mid to late 90s was a weird time because you started having the internet creeping up, and this was not no fault of Art's. Magazines weren't interested in talking about toning gear much at that period. It was a weird time. Post Nirvana, it was a weird time for music in general, and no one wanted to talk about how to get tone much. There was these weird years where, not slamming, but the people I was seeing on the cover of those magazines could not play guitar. They didn't care about the tone, and I was still on the side like, well, I'm still trying to roll this tone stuff, and then hanging out with guys like Dave. You'd see all this gear, and I figured there had to be somebody else who wanted to know the exact gear, the wiring, what the amps were, talk to the artists, and really dig into the tone chasing part of it, because there just wasn't any of that out. So that, yeah, I think by the late 90s, I was making more trips out to hang out with Dave and then just go through Browers and look at all the systems that would come in. So I probably still got boxes full of 35 millimeter shot stuff of everything at Browers back then.
What was the magazine called again? I'm sorry.
I think we were doing Virtual Guitar Magazine back then.
Virtual Guitar Magazine.
Yeah. So because when I would do stuff for Guitar Player, I'm like, well, but nobody's talking to Tim Pearson asking him what he's using on records or what chorus and what the rig was. So I would just take it upon myself to get all the info. So I've still got stacks of cassette tapes and photos of everybody's rigs and all the details from back then that some of it never came out. But now it's 20, 25 years old, and it's actually would be fun to pull all that stuff back out.
Yeah.
Because, as you remember, it's like, well, let's pull out John Shank's rig circa 1997. And it was, full of AC 30s and Selmers, and there was so many great rigs, in a time before. And again, thank you for modern technology at a time when there was not a fractal piece to replace the rig. It's like, you wanted that sound, well, you put a tri-stereo chorus in your rack. You put the real stuff in the rack. That was the option, So that was probably the late 90s, and then there was a weird period when doing that. So I'm going to try to fill it in for everybody. So yeah, I was still guitar playing. I was still touring actually quite a bit too. I was doing fly dates, so I wasn't committing to writing at all 24/7. And then at some point, I got talked into Trips actually called me. He's like, man, you ever thought about moving to LA? I'm like, no, because I was still based in the Bay Area. He's like, oh, you should really talk to these guys at Line 6. They really need somebody to work here who knows the gear and can ride and knows the history of this stuff. And I flew down one day and met Marcus Ryle and the owners of Line 6 and a few of the other guys, Greg Westall, a few other folks there. And they talked me into moving in LA and working for Line 6 full time, like around 2000, I think, or so. And so that I skipped about 10 years in there, but it kind of went from doing Guitar Player most of like 89, 90.
You were crashing on my floor.
Yeah, well, that was the funny thing is I got to LA and okay, let's go there. So I get to LA and it was when Line 6 was still in Thousand Oaks, and they put me up on a corporate apartment for a while. So I didn't know where I was going to live yet. They're like, you're going to work here and you need to start working here next week. So just fly down and start working. I'm like, well, I still have a house and a wife in the Bay Area. So, and then I was talking to Dave, but he's like, oh, just come stay at my house. So like my first official, month in LA, I lived in a hotel and then lived in your house for a while, which which is funny to say that. And that was ages ago. So that's what I mean, how small this business is.
Yeah.
Because you were like
so long ago, I almost barely can remember it.
Yeah. Oh, dude, that was a whole lifetime ago. I mean, that was two, at least one or two ex-wives ago for me too.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago, and but that's how small it was you get a call from Trips. Hey, come here. I'm going to stay at Dave's house for a while. And I think I found an apartment because I was just going to your place after one day. We found something on Burnback Boulevard there right off of Coldwater Canyon. Yeah. And it's like, hey, I found an apartment. Great. And then that's literally kind of how I ended up at Line 6, working with a whole bunch of folks who, again, I'd known from before. So I walked into that place. And just to fill everybody in, people like Rich Lasner, who was the guy behind Ibanez's, some of their really big guitarists. He was involved in the Vi guitar, a lot of that stuff. He was at Line 6. Joey Brasler, another guy who's been in LA, just a staple of this town. Worked for everybody from Rivera to Voodoo Lab, Fender, Yamaha. He's at Fender now. So working with Joey there. So again, the same people you work with all worked at different places and kept moving. Dave's probably the only one that continued to be Rack Systems and Dave Friedman. Everybody else was always moving jobs and working for somebody else over the years, you know. But a lot of these, so Jamie Kime, another, again, fantastic guitar player. Love Jamie, you know. And honestly, to tell the stories, I met Jamie because he was working for you, Dave. And then later on, Jamie worked for Line 6. And then I went to go see his new thing, which was playing for Dweezil in the Zappa Play Zappa thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I met my future wife because of that. So we can't give Jamie too much credit because he'll hold it over me, and I'll never be able to repay that. But so that's how I met my wife now, was going to see Jamie because he was playing with Dweezil at Third Encore. We went during rehearsals in 2005. You know,
it's okay. He'll still hate everyone and everything.
Oh, he'll hate, yeah. His lovely little black heart. You know, one of the most amazing players in the world, and just I love the guy. And just a talented dude. But yeah, these are the guys we just keep mentioning that because they're guys around town that have been around forever. Yeah, so that's how I met that. God, there's a lot I'm missing because I think I'm old now and I forget.
When did you go to Voodoo Lab?
Well, here's the other thing. So everyone's known Josh forever. You know, I mean,
Voodoo Lab used to be here in out in Southern California.
Yeah, they were in a place called Agura Hills originally, and funny enough, that's where Line 6 ended up moving to, was Agura Hills. There's a really interesting club called the Canyon Club. A lot of bands would play there, which is just past Calabasas here on the 101. And Josh was there in the late 90s because I'd known Josh too from the early 90s too, and hanging out with him. And he decided to leave LA and move to Northern California, the Sonoma County area. He was done with LA. So he leaves and goes up north around the same time that I leave north and come to LA. So around that period. So he took all the Voodoo Lab company with him. But and I think at some point he's going to come on here. But I know, Dave, you were talking to Josh a lot because Josh was designing MIDI patch bays and then got into little switcher MIDI and all that stuff, and which is crazy. I
don't remember how I'm going to have to rehash that with him.
Yeah.
Maybe he had come out with the GCX or something, or maybe he had come out with something.
Yeah, because that would have been like
ground control, I think, was first.
Right.
And that, oh no, we worked on the GCX together.
Yeah. The original one with the
original GCX switcher, Josh and I worked on together.
Yep.
Getting the relay switching quiet and picking the relays and listening to the buffer and all that stuff. We did that together, and then we also did a lot of work on the pedals they came out with, like there was the Octavia deal, the Micro Vibe. We worked on the tremolo. We worked on. I mean, Josh basically designed it. I was just the sounding board of that doesn't sound right yet. Nope, that's not right yet. Nope, it should be more like that.
Yep, absolutely. Because he is a great engineer. He's great at this stuff. Yeah, so when you said, sorry, to killing you the longer story when I went to Voodoo, because there was no conscious effort to just go, well, I should go do something else. It was, you know, I love Josh. He's like family. But that was another funny thing is I think just like Dave, like one day, he's like, man, what kind of pedal do you want? And I get something out for Josh and send it to him. And a month later, I got something. I'm going to call it the Sparkle Drive. So that was just one of those things, like, in talking to him one day, like, could you do this little parallel mix thing and do all this stuff? And he would just build it. Because he owned the whole company and he was an engineer. If he wanted to do something, he would make it happen. You know. So
I love that.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Yeah, it was just one of those dumb things. Yeah, it's funny that thing took a lot. Then everyone started putting blend controls on their overdrives, and but that was just me talking to Josh one day in the '90s, and then so to be honest, by 2005 or 6, I was pretty done with digital. I was kind of getting tired of writing presets for pods and betas and variaxes, and it was great to that's one of my first dumb ideas that actually some smart person made work really well. Thanks.
I love the pedal. Great pedal.
Yeah, it was one of those dumb things, and it was because you trying to solve a problem,
that pedal works incredibly well in bass.
Dude, I know, totally. Just add a little bit to a bass, yeah,
because it's got the parallel path on it.
Yeah.
So you can your bass signal can pass distorted, and it retains all the full frequency response. But then you have the blended in grit with it. Works killer on bass.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It was my whole thing was I wanted to sound like I had a little deluxe and a twin, so I could get some kind of crunch and sustain out of one amp, but then have the clarity and the jangle out of another thing. And that was really I wanted to stop carrying 2 amps around. That was the whole point of that, honestly.
Well,
Yeah, it worked. But so yeah, around 2005 or 6, and I love the guys at Line 6, but I was burnt because I was doing we had started doing a thing called guitar ports. We were recording all these -1 tracks in tablature and had these pods working on pod stuff and marketing. And I remember one day they handed me this sheet like, well, you're gonna do all this other stuff now. I was like in every video and audio and artist related. It was just so much for me, and I was just burnt. And I just resigned one day. I'm like, I'm done. I quit. I quit. I let it out. It was no hard feelings, but I just handed in a resignation letter one day. And Josh was like, dude, just come over here and hang out. Let's just make stuff. I'm like, great, done. That's literally how easy that was. Because I always loved hanging out with Josh. And then we went to work revamping all of his power supplies. Because at the time, he only had one. It was like a 2+ was it.
Yeah.
So then we started going through stuff and switching and going into trying to see like, hey, high current's going to be a thing. Let's start putting 400 milliamps. And we started making these things called, ISO 5 and pedal power 4x4. And it was just me getting back into analog again. Because as you can see in this room, even though I worked for a company making digital, I play a tube amp, and that keeps me grounded. There's a whole bunch of old guitars we can talk about later because there's some actual interesting stuff back there. But it's old. I like the real stuff. If you really want to chase that tone, go play a real Marshall and go get your ass kicked, because playing a Marshall that's buried in a digital device is not the same as sitting in front of a 100-watt Marshall blazing on 10, so I always still had that. I'm like, I got to get back to analog. And Josh was like, let's just come and do it here. So that's where I was around 2006, but I was always consulting for folks because I didn't want to do digital full time. So while working with Josh, he let me go and do stuff for Avid. So I was working on a thing called 11 they had for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So the first 11 rack, I actually did all the preset design for that product while working for Josh. So I would dip my toe back into digital a little bit, but I didn't want it to be full time anymore, which is weird to say. I'm back in the same situation again, but on my terms, which is a little weird.
Yeah, and now you're then it went from there to UA, right?
Yeah, and that's a weird one, and we can talk about that. In that, I said no for a long time. I was like, no, I like what I'm doing, staying with Josh. It's wonderful. And then when they finally said, well, what if you did guitar stuff? I said, well, you don't do guitar stuff. Why would I go to UA? I don't want to be back in digital plugin land. And so we want to do guitar stuff. So why don't you just come here and figure something out? And then at that point, it's like, well, what would you want? And it's like, well, I'd really love to continue using my amps, but then have the whole back end really have a studio quality sound, because I like being in a room with a 412 and the air that's going through the room and pushing stuff and mics, and then it presented us, well, what if we gave you this project to work on for a couple of years? And that ended up being Aux later on. But
wow.
So that was one of those things. I told Josh one day, I was like, dude, I love you, man, and I will continue to do anything you need work wise. And I worked it out with UA. I said, look, I'll come and work on this project, but I'm not going to work 40 hours. I'm going to continue to help my friend Josh out because I'm not leaving him stranded. And they're like, okay, we'll let you do both for a while. So that's kind of how that worked. So I didn't have to move up there. I worked in my own facility here, would use the studios up there. But it was, again, funny enough, the same people I had worked with at Line 6. Greg Rustall was running it. I hung out with Bill Putnam one day, who was the owner of the company, and he's a guitar player. So thankfully the guy at the very top of it played guitar, which is different than working for somebody who doesn't play music at all, or maybe plays keyboards or drums or something. When the guy at the top's like, oh, I want you to work on this because I want it, you're in a pretty good spot. So I've been very lucky to work with some really smart people, and they've trusted me to actually work on stuff. Again, there's no, I wish it was a better way to explain it, because it almost seems like it was just accidental how all of it happened. But I think probably, as Dave knows, you work with somebody, and then 10 years later, someone goes, "Oh, I worked with that guy. You should talk to him." It's all really who you've worked with, not less about who you know, but really who you've worked with, and you've actually shown that, oh, you should talk to that guy. He knows what he's doing. He's done that before. And it's a referral system, to be quite honest, you know.
It's like a circle, and then a little circle outside of that circle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then if you know, if you're an ass and you treat people poorly and all that, you're blacklisted.
Pretty much, yeah.
You know.
Yeah, unless you're really, really talented, but nobody really wants to deal with that, honestly, you know. Yeah. I know that. I hope that didn't mean to get dark on any of that, but it's not, because I didn't come in, and I think if anyone really wanted to make a bunch of money, don't get into this business. This is not the business for you. You know, if you got in this business because you love
standard line, James. So
I know.
So the line that I generally use is, so James, when did you realize you made a mistake?
Exactly. When I left college 2 years in to go play music and tour with a band. That's exactly when I realized, like, shit. When it's like, what's your backup plan? Well, I just burned that backup plan. I got none anymore. You have to make this work. Yeah. You know, I guess it's going to be guitar. And just for everyone to know, I had this same conversation my senior year in high school. They're like, so what are you going to do after high school? I'm like, shit, dude, I'm going to work with gear. I'm going to play guitar. They're like, oh, no. The look of horror on this guy's face. He's like, you're going to do what? Oh, no. You really need another plan, man. Like, nope, I'm good. You commit. It works out. It worked out. You have to commit to it, man. It's this business is a lot of hard work, you know. I mean, how many late nights have you pulled, Dave? Because like, oh crap, they need this gear by then. You're having its phone call.
I can't even tell you guys, you know, over the years, although fortunately this doesn't happen anymore, really. But there used to be a lot of rig work being done, a lot of touring, a lot of budgets.
Yeah.
And if there's a deadline, there's a deadline. And there's no, oh, you can't, I'm sorry, you can't take your rig on the tour. I'm sorry, I'm not quite done with it yet.
Yeah.
So there was many a nights when we sat and worked all night.
Yep.
Where like the truck's coming to pick the stuff up the next morning. And you know, the worst part, and generally what would happen is this. You'd stay up all night long. You'd finish the rack by the supposed 9 a.m. call when the truck is supposed to show up or something.
Yep.
And then the truck doesn't come till 3 in the afternoon. And you're like, you motherfuckers.
This motherfucker.
You motherfuckers. I could have gone home and slept for a few hours and come back. But I remember running out of something and having to go. I mean, I remember times where like you ran out of something and you're like, it's 12 or 1 in the morning. You're like, where can I get this now? Or where can I get something that'll work for this now? And it's like, oh yeah, there's a 24-hour Home Depot.
Yeah.
And I could get the cable tie, the couple cable ties I need from there, or some stupid thing like that.
You're catching the fries right before they close. You're grabbing a bag of Doritos.
Go to Home Depot at 1 in the morning. Yep. Come back to try to finish this rig.
Dude, it
sounds glamorous.
Oh no, well there was a Simpsons where they talk about
it's painful thinking about doing that now.
Oh dude, no,
I'm too old. Sorry.
You're absolutely right. And where you're talking, I realized where my burnout really hit. And it was, I was working at Line 6 all day doing official like design work stuff, marketing stuff. And somehow I got roped into being the session guy who was also working on tracks that ended up in Guitar Report and ended up in Guitar Hero, the video game. So I was rushing it. I was at Line 6 all day. I'd run home to my home studio, slam a sandwich, and I'd record till 2 or 3 in the morning, get up, go back to Line 6 and work all day. And then do a whole day, drive back home, work on the tracks all night. And that was like this. And I was like in the middle of the night cutting Cliffs of Dover for Guitar Hero. And then going to Line 6 in the morning and sitting in a meeting with an Excel spreadsheet and talking about product design and writing presets, and then go back home and do another song or play, I think I was at Santana too, trying to read the music for Black Magic Woman and cop the exact note for note because the game had the actual exact notation. And you had to play it exact. So, dude, this was like, I'm like, I'm done with all this. I got to. But then again, that was my job. I was lucky to be able to do that. Someone actually let me do all this stuff. So I can complain about it now, but I'm too old for that shit now. I can't work on 2 hours of sleep anymore, you know? And again, I was in my late 30s, so that was...
It was hard to do when you were 20-something.
Oh, yeah. You were just burning out.
And you could power through, but you could power through that.
I could power through with 4-shot lattes and sunglasses in meetings the next day.
I mean, you know, if push comes to shove and I had a deadline still, I still would do it because I don't have a choice.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you don't have.
Believe me, that kind of stuff doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah,
because the urgency isn't there, the last minute thing isn't there, the people aren't putting together as elaborate rigs. It's simpler.
Well, you might be forgetting that last year you had a run out for Slash. For something.
Oh no! I've flown out a million times for panic calls from people. I flew out with Ed on tour when it's funny. I remember this story. I'm trying to remember it exactly. I was in there was something going on or something he thought was going on with the rig, and I got a call like an evening before, and or maybe a day or so before, and it's like, can you fly out to Detroit? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm from Detroit, great. And then this is interesting because I hadn't talked to my best friend growing up in a long time. Like we just mutually just sort of lost touch, you know, like things happen over the years and you don't really mean to, but it happens, you know? And I'm like, man, I'd like to see him. I'd like to figure that out. So, you know, I called his store, his guitar store, and I'm like going, I'll just leave a message for him to call me or something, you know? Of course he answers the phone. And I'm like, hey, hey, I'm coming to Detroit. You want to go to the Van Halen show? You want to come and hang out with me for the day? So, you know, I go out there and I do this repair. It really wasn't anything. And, you know, I take him to sound check and he meets Eddie and all this stuff. Eddie gives him a big hug and all this stuff. And it was a thrill for him, you know, and I flew back and everything was fine. And then I literally get a call the next night or something. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I got it backwards. I flew out to Chicago. And I was in Chicago and I took my wife and there was some problem. I did all this work and it was all fine and good. He wanted me to stay for an extra night to go to the next show. So there was a day off in Chicago. We go to this next show. Everything's fine. So everything was good. And then I fly back home. And literally I got home and that evening or the next morning or something, I get a phone call and they dumped Ed's rack on its face on loadout. Like it fell, you know, off the loading dock or something. It fell. Can you come back out? I'm like, what? I just got home. And that's when I was going to Detroit. There was a day off in between. But that's when I was going to Detroit. And that's when I had my friend come out and meet me and meet Ed. But I mean, literally we're in Chicago for 2 shows and a day off. And then I just got home and I literally had a bunch of work to do that I was not here to do. And then you got to go back. I'm like, I might as well just stayed.
Yeah. Seriously. Could have been on the bus with them.
You know, of course they flew me first class. So it's
yeah. That's a cool story. Hey, I want to get to a couple super chats.
Yeah.
Modern Vintage Thank you for the super chat. James, Dave and other pros have mentioned a top-end sound with the aux when playing distortion. Is UA aware of and fixing this? Any chance of a new aux unit soon, or just software updates for 2021, 2020?
I will not be working on any software updates if I answer two of those questions, because I'm never really allowed to tell you what new stuff's coming. So that's the thing. And the top end fizz thing, that's just dependent on your amp, because I've actually looked into it, and I have no good answer for you. There's nothing to look at, to be quite honest. A lot of amps, certain tweed amps, are actually sort of odd how they break up. And sometimes it depends on a certain amp's power section, and it's been fairly random. So I haven't been able to suss any of that out, because a lot of times you'd be surprised how many times I'm not saying you've doing this, but how many times it's the amp is not in great shape, or certain circuits don't like to be turned up very loud. There are a lot of amps that don't actually like to be very loud, and they just don't break up very well. And I have one Tweed Deluxe hand-wired one. It honestly sounds fizzy and crappy when there's an attenuator or when it's in the room. So a lot of that's just going to be sort of amp dependent. But I think it's just dependent on your gear. The other stuff, I'm sure there will be more stuff. I just can't say right now, because I'll get in a whole lot of trouble, and then there'll be no hanging out with Mark and Dave again. I'll be working in a taco truck.
Well, I can't wait to see what else is coming.
Yeah, there is stuff coming. I will say that next year a lot of folks will be very, very surprised.
Some people say that, and but I don't know. The aux is a really great unit. It sounds amazing. It sounds amazing. Fantastic. It's all apples and oranges. You can get a lot of good sounds out of a lot of pieces of gear that are out there, and there's other load boxes, and there's static IRs. But the thing about that, the aux is not really a static IR. It's a model of the speaker with cone cry and this and that, and distortion, and so it's a little different. It's more of a living, breathing, creature.
Yeah,
and the plate reverbs and the mic selection, and then it's fucking cool.
No, thanks. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, that was the whole point, was to. So I think if someone wants to just go play live, I love Stevie Fry. Just go buy one of Fryette's things. If you just want a big power amp on an attenuator, and you're doing that, talk to Stevie. That's just who else is great at making a giant power amp? That guy's been making giant power amps for God knows how long.
Mm-hmm.
A massive VHT, the big purple ones that sit in the bottom of your rack, and he's the guy for that. And my whole point was to do something different. I wanted someone to be able to take a bunch of heads and not have any cabinet at all, but sound like you were in a studio. So really, the thing with aux is to not just base it on the attenuation cut, because that was actually a thought for what, because I don't like units that kill the amp completely. I always feel disconnected. And again, now we're going to open the can of worms. It's wet, dry, wet. I always feel like you should have a little bit of your dry coming out the cab, and it should be analog, and it shouldn't be touching anything digital or another power amp if you can get away with it. So I like bleeding some of the analog power section through a cabinet, which is the whole reason that little stepped attenuator, because it's not a real amp, because I wanted it to be tapped off the actual amp's power and to be analog. So there's a whole bunch of analog circuitry doing that. But the whole point was to not just take what would you would call like a flat load with this raw sound out of it. If you would do that, you can do that on aux. I put that in there, but the whole point was we take that, and then I'm doing other stuff to that signal. The whole point was for me to go, well, how do I get you from your amp to a pair of stereo outputs that just sounds like Van Halen 1, and you don't have to worry about anything else in the middle? Could I do that? And could I do it for Randy Rhoads, for Rush, for every other type of setup and back end? That was the real technology. Was okay. Getting a line out of an amp is not that hard. Making that line output sound like an actual record is what took 3 years, honestly. And figuring out, because I also had to figure out room modeling with cabinets. If anyone's sat in a room with a 412, imagine 12-inch speakers shooting all across the studio glass, the drum, the partitions, the ceiling, the wooden floor. Is the cabinet in the corner of the studio? Is it in the middle of the studio? Is it facing a partition? And that took a year or something just to put the cabinets I liked in a room and then suss out where I liked them in the room. And that had nothing to do with the mic shit. That was just what I liked the room mics to sound like. So there was a lot of that and figuring out how to model the rooms. And because I think I'm going to go deep in this. There's good and bad phase, and your ears want to hear some of that phase, some of that room sound, that air. Because that was the one depressing thing for me with a lot of digital devices, that when you put headphones on or put it in a track, it just sounds like this in your face thing, which is great. But even a 57 picks up bleed from the room. You get this little reflective off the floor, and you need to have some of that in the signal. So that my whole point was to try to get it to really sound like recorded tracks. So yeah, it had to have the processing in there. It had to not be connected to a computer. I didn't want readouts on it. It just had to put it in your amp. If you plugged in headphones, does it sound like those records? Yeah, we tried. And if you break any of those pieces out, yeah, if you just want to attenuate an amp, there's tons of great products that do that. If you want just a load box, tons of people make just load boxes. Knock yourself out. I mean, there's a ton of great tools out there. I was just trying to do something a little different and sort of, I guess I'll put it this way. Let me do the nerdy homework for you, and then just go plug your amp into this thing, and hopefully there's something in there that works for you.
Oh, I think it's a gold mine. I love it. I absolutely love the product. I've got it sitting right here. You can't see it, but yeah. And where it really shines is when you plug it into, like, I got it plugged into my Apollo Twin, right? Going out of my monitors, and using the iPad. I've got a Yamaha, whatever monitors I've got, and it sounds phenomenal. I mean, I can get almost any tone that I want. I want to go to Motley Crue tone, boom, I can do it. And especially with some of the presets.
That's what took me forever, was just writing the presets too. But then not all, because I did all that myself. So but that was fun doing this. And because I would take out what I would assume would be the real head. So I'd pull out some Silver Jubilees or pull out a mess of triple rec, and I'd set up the amp and then write the back end for that tone. So there's another room full of other amp heads. I know there's not much back there. There's a few amps back there.
Yeah.
But there's a whole steel shelving in another part of this place that's full of other stuff. Because and I love this stuff. So the likelihood is, I would be doing this if they didn't pay me to do this, honestly.
Yeah.
So what else do guitar nerds do? We tone chase,
So speaking of guitar nerds, I sent Mark a picture a second ago. Did you get that, Mark?
Uh-oh. Wait, do I have pants on? Is it bad? Okay.
No, it's not a picture of you. But it's a pretty cool picture.
Yeah, let me see if I can share it.
See if you can share it. Because you have to build the bleed into the UA thing. So, and you'll see what I mean in a minute from the picture.
Let me make the picture larger, and then let me just switch screens if I can make it happen. What's it doing?
Pete Thorne showed me this picture. I hadn't seen it before. Hang on a sec.
Give me 1 second.
It's coming.
Oh,
I'm gonna have to share. I'm gonna share my screen, and then we'll see what happens. This picture.
Oh, so that's Sunset Sound?
That's Sunset Sound.
Yep.
Van Halen. Look at that. Everyone in the same room.
Yeah.
Recording.
And you can see the mic on that. On the cab right there.
Yeah, there's another mic down low too.
Right.
This is Van Halen 1, I believe.
We think it's Van Halen. You sure it's Van? Let's see.
No, I think Van Halen 2 was recorded in the bigger room.
Right, because there's pictures of them, but I don't think it was the same. Yeah, they were switching rooms, I thought.
This is the smaller room.
He's playing the Destroyer.
Pretty sure it's Van Halen 1.
Yeah.
And cabinets mic'd up with two 57s.
Is there a baffle or something in front of that?
Well, there's a baffle. So their gear is in front of the drums, and it's baffled off.
Can you zoom that a little bit, Mark? Can you zoom into the cab?
There's a bass amp over by Michael Anthony. and one guitar cab by Ed here.
I don't think I can zoom. No, can't.
All recorded in the same room.
Wow.
I don't want to get myself in too much trouble, but I've heard the multi-tracks, and you can absolutely hear.
You can hear all the bleed.
Yeah, you hear all the bleed. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And you can hear Running with the Devil and listen to the guitar racks and hear the bass going boom, boom,
Sure.
boom. It's all there. Or you put on the drum mics and you
That was what was so interesting. I go, oh, this is how it was recorded.
Yeah.
Mm.
The cab's in front of the drum, so they're pointing away.
Run away.
Baffled off. And there, the cool thing about that is you notice that Alex has a set of headphones on.
Yep.
So he's hearing them really well. And they're playing like a band in a room.
Yep.
Mm.
So they can hear the drums and themselves, obviously. So it's capturing the live thing.
Yeah.
Not all in cans or anything.
Yeah, the question is where is the other? Because I want to be careful. I know there's 2 guitar tracks on the multis from Van Halen 1, so there's definitely a cab. Yeah, so we're pretty sure one of those cabs has the JBLs in it. Then
Well, I think the cab has the JBLs and the Celestians.
And so you think he split it?
Yeah, at least the pictures that you saw were slant cabs, and the slant cab had the JBL and the top, and the bottom was the Celestian. And when you listen to Running with the Devil multi-tracks, which you have, and I have, plain as day. That one is brighter. It's a glass.
There's absolutely one is absolutely a Celestian that's mid-rangey. The other is a razor bladey JBL. You can absolutely hear it. Mm-hmm. And there's no reverb on it.
And later, Ed told me God he hated that sound on that first record.
Oh no, it's funny because you find out like he didn't want 10 Templeman doing that shit. He didn't like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's other folks who's like, well, his 84 tone got a little bright. Well, you think about it, the Echoplex probably went away.
Right?
Well, I know. Weird. Because his tone was changing. His tone was changing a little bit album to album.
Yeah.
And
but as we all know, studio to studio, miking to miking, console to console, speaker to speaker.
And he's touring. Yeah. So
he moved to 57. He moved to a 57 a half inch.
Oh, dude.
Over. It's radically different.
Right.
Yeah.
Or also I noticed in that picture too that those mics are a little bit away from the cab too.
They're a couple of inches away.
They're not right on the grill kind of thing. Well, there's no grill on that cab, but
no grill. Yeah. So I've seen a few folks. There are a few other producers who take the grill off and actually put like a Royer with what would be past the a grill. Which if it's a ribbon mic, okay, you can kind of get away with it. I don't like to be that close to the speaker. It's getting too bright. The center of the cone is not really where you want to be most of the time. You want to get a little away from that. So what I did find out is you realize that Van Halen 1 was likely cut on a Bill Putnam Universal Audio console, which is the same console that a few years later he ended up buying from them and putting in 5150.
Yeah.
So technically, if you look, there's a picture of him at 5150, and his feet are up on a console that has a silver top on it. That should be the same Bill Putnam console that was on Van Halen 1. So really, we should consider the 84 record cut on the same desk as Van Halen 1 technically.
Interesting. That is
and then Van Halen 2 was cut on API.
I think that was a different because there was a few other consoles at Sunset Sound too.
Because Ed loved APIs too. So
those are great. The APIs are fucking awesome.
He had an API for a while, and then he put an SSL in his studio, and he said, I remember him telling me, God, I fucking hated this thing. It just didn't sound good. When I put it in, it was like, what's this?
I mean, SSLs are great to mix on. They've got all this fun stuff, but no, this isn't even just this week. I'm constantly reading stuff all the time or researching stuff, and I wanted to know exactly where that console went that Van Halen 1 was cut on, and then I finally like, holy shit, that's the same console he bought later and put in his own house, and it lasted a couple of years, and he dumped it to somebody else too. But
he put an API in.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty weird when you think, because it's all part of the tone. And then, as Dave said too, like someone's asked me, like, "Hey man, an aux, when I mic my distortion cab, it sounds a little different." Like, dude, I can't put the same gear in the room and put the mic in exactly the same spot ever again, because even if I'm 1/8 of an inch off, that moves the high end. Or so it's like, I'm a nerd for consistency, but it's like, man, once you're in the 90% range, you have to go back and worry about playing your guitar at some point. And I nerd out on gear. But I think the whole point is to hopefully stop playing with the gear and play guitar.
Right.
So that's what's more fun than actually buying all this gear. The fun for me was to pull out my old gear. I was like, I should pull out all my stuff that could do the Van Halen thing, and then just Perspective Ed, work on Mean Streets for a couple of days after work.
Right.
With a 100-watt Marshall. Like, seriously, just sitting here going, it's like, what else is more fun than that?
Right.
Wiring up the gear, then working on that's fun, so yeah, I have to balance I think we all do is get the gear, and then again you hear Ed. I mean, well, maybe that 1 amp, there was nothing special about his Marshall. It was stock, it's his intent, how the stuff around it,
Mm-hmm.
So we could talk about that a whole other topic, because I know I'm going to be very careful saying this too. And with Ed's passing, YouTube is now littered with everyone showing you how to get, how to play Eruption, how to sound like Ed, and and I watch everything too. You watch all the YouTube videos, and there's some great information out there. But I'm sure and you guys did a really great tone talk too on the Ed tribute thing too.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
No, it's I try to watch stuff, or while I'm going for a walk, or I'll leave it in the background while I'm doing some documentation. And just because any one of us, you learn some little piece, it's like, oh, there's the magic. And we could, I'm still trying to figure out, when did the Echoplex go away from Ed's rig? I know I keep coming back to Ed, but it's this whole week has been more about just trying to tie up some loose ends with Ed's rigs. It's like, when did the Echoplex go away?
Been fair warning.
Would you think fair? So do we think it's on fair warning at all? Is the question.
I don't. Now I have to go back and listen, but I don't think it is. That's when the harmonizer appeared first.
Yeah, so we start thinking. So we're going to see, now we've shifted into that. So we get to fair warning, because I also went down the chorus rabbit hole. I've been doing this for a few years. Is the distorted chorus and little guitars. That chorus sound is different than what you would have heard on 84, which would have been done post.
Yeah.
So, in fact, I actually mocked all this up. I could play it for you too. I mocked all of this crap up, and it's just running. And this isn't even my work thing. I'm doing it because I want to do it. So here's the difference. The difference of the amp seeing the chorus in front, which is I bought the guys at Dylan were really nice. They sent me the one they remade for Ed, the Boss rack mount one.
Yeah.
So I have that patch in front, compared to what I have in post in my rig is what would be similar to like a pitch shifted thing. All right, well, let's see if it's working here. It's probably right now the phase is on, so I'm gonna turn the phaser off and put the chorus in front. Because the one thing I hear for it, I was trying to get was you get this almost flam on the top of his notes. Because the chorus time is just it's not really short. So you get this kunk at the top of the notes. So it's not like a high end, like we think chorus, like a tri-stereo chorus has this big, beautiful spread. This is a nasty analog chorus.
That Roland.
That Roland, yeah, the rack mount
thing, right?
Yeah, so that's what
I worked on one recently for Toshi and Agi. And he's going down a very, very deep Van Halen path, and and he brought one in, and I'm like, man, this sounds good.
Oh yeah, it's great. Yeah, when you play that, and now I'm not on a little guitar, but which is completely different. I'm on a loop switcher, taking all that crap out. My high end's back because the preamp of the Echoplex is out too, but then we do it in post. I'm going to put it in post. not used to 8s, but so the difference in just like where is the chorus coming from? Is it the era where it was the boss in front of the amps? Which again, you can't do the same stuff on it. It's you hear that little. It's more wobbly, little. Yeah, it
gets a little nasty.
And it's one of the funny things that and I'll just say it now. I cannot stand a phase 90 after a distortion pedal. It sounds weird.
Oh no, it's supposed to be in front.
It has to be in. Yeah, it needs to be distorted. Yeah.
For me, that was a big golden rule with rigs. It's phase 90 is always before distortion. It's always early. And I feel the same way about Univibes.
Yep. Oh, Univibes are so kind of. We either
want the Univibe after a distortion or fuzz because it sounds fritzy and just
there's no
washed out and just awful sounding.
Yeah, no, I am 100% with you there, and actually same thing with the Echoplexes because that's what's back there too is that coloration needs to be in front of the amp because I think now we've gone down the rabbit hole of you can have the amp. So does this amp? And I think people are asking great questions like, "Hey, will this amp give me this sound?" Well, that amp would give you that part of that sound, but do you have the phase 90 or the Echoplex or is it the pickup? There's other things that shape the tone on the way to the amp. That
what I always wondered too, and I just thought about this the other day. We're really geeking out here, guys.
Yeah, so, we're going down. We're going down.
We're going down a deep hole here.
Yeah, yeah.
So I wondered, he started with he might have had a Fender Strat, or then he built his own Strat. So my question is, okay, whatever the pickup was originally, let's say it was his Gibson pickup out of his 335. At one point it was. So was the volume knob in the guitar a 250K
or a
300K?
300, okay.
Or 500K? Because all of that makes a huge difference.
He would have had to get the wire harness out of the Gibson to get the 5, you figure. But it looks like he chopped up his 63. There was a Rhoads or Strat you saw in those pictures that looked like he probably cut that pick guard and probably yanked the pot. So they're probably 250.
That's why I thought maybe he had a 250K. I mean, maybe later it was a 500K pot. Maybe not. But that 250K pot, depending on what pickup was in that guitar, be radically different. So let's say he had a super distortion in the guitar or a Mighty Mite pickup, and he did at all one point in time or another.
Yep.
That pot choice with whatever pickup was in it is a huge difference.
In fact, I had a few Strats, and this was from Danny Gatton stuff. If you just moving the tone pots from 250 to 5, you'd get some high end back. Oh, yeah. You move it from 250 to 1. I had a couple with 1 meg on the tone controls, and that brought a whole bunch of high end clarity back on single coils. So just for everyone, because I know Dave, you know all this stuff already, but yeah, the minute you start moving those values from 250 to 5 to 1 meg, you get a whole bunch of high end back, and then you realize at some point he didn't have anything but one volume control, didn't even use the tone controls. Yeah. So that's not even loading anything down.
But so not only does the top end change on the 250K versus 500, let's just say you're talking Gibson pickup.
Yep.
The mid-range sort of changes a bit too. Yep. There's definitely a more little pronounced mid-range thing that happens. Maybe that's just because you're missing the top end and maybe the bottom end a little. So you can really shape, how the guitar sounds with the value of the pot. But this has never been talked about really.
Well, I mean, we should.
And how, and using different guitars on different records and different things, you're going to get radically different guitar sounds.
We can go there. Let's go there and see if anyone, because I hate to say it. Back when I used to get stuff from DiMaggio, I'd get replacement pots and I'd make them send me like 20 pots, and then I would measure them all.
Yeah.
and you would find that some of them would be 220, 215, some would be 270, 280. Mm-hmm. And that even just that bit would change your high end. So if you were really used to the sound of a guitar and you were replacing a pot, you would try, you need to measure it and put something within that range back, because the older pots, the tolerances were 10-20%. They're all over the place.
Hell, newer pots are that way.
Yeah, no, yeah. So that insanity on top of when I'm knocking some cobwebs off. Steve Blucher, good old Steve Blucher at DiMarzio,
who now has, I heard, retired.
He's semi-retired now mostly. I'd called down to talk to him. They're like, oh, he's home. He's taking a few days off and working from home, and yeah, pretty much semi-retired these days. I should call and check on him, but he was. In fact, I'll tell you this story. This came in. They had sent a guitar to guitar player, and they were trying to do hum canceling single coil pickups.
I remember all this stuff.
Yeah, you remember the virtual vintages.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I heard it, and I remember giving Art some notes saying they sound really good. They're just a little dark. And that somehow went to Larry DiMarzio and pissed him off. And then that got sent to Steve. And then I get a call a week later, because I'd walked away from it, from Larry DiMarzio. Was like, what do you mean my pickups are too dark? I'm like, oh shit, great. Like, well, but he was curious to know. And then he's like, well, I need you to talk to Steve Blucher. So then I spent a good year just talking to Steve Blucher. And where we landed was I started using virtual vintages for myself, but then raising the pot values to compensate for the darkness of the coil. So I started putting 500K pots in my Strats, but only with certain pickups. So he's like, and it made a huge difference to start playing with the values of the tone controls, or playing with the volume pole. And in fact, it's more common than I think, because I'm pretty sure even on this, and this is not a fancy Charvel. It's just, Mike Tempesta, bless his heart. Let me come down to Charvel down there in Burbank one day, and I played everything in the room, all the fancy stuff. Like, no, I just kind of want this 2 humbuckers. But what they did was they made up for it on this tone control. It has one of those little detents. So I think when you get the tone control all the way up, it takes the pot completely out.
Yeah.
So the difference in just moving that pot from completely out to loaded at 500 is to this. Oh, sorry. You know what? Let me take the Echoplex out of the chain, my switcher. So this to this.
Darker.
I mean, that's a pretty big change in the attack of the guitar. So then you have to imagine Ed going, just give me the volume control. And so again, now we're back at, was it a 500 and no tone control at all? Because that would have been a pretty loud, bright guitar coming off that. But then he's also going through the Echoplex, which takes out all of the high end.
So what does that do?
So let me see what the Echoplex does. So if you want to go that, so in fact, I have a button down here that'll do that. Here's the same guitar, same amp setup with no Echoplex. And then the Echoplex in the chain. I'll go back and forth.
Yeah.
It almost has a mid-range bump because it's so much high end is taken out of it that you're perceiving more mid-range on a softer. In fact, let's make it worse. Is I'm going to switch guitars to a Strat. We'll grab this, and then you'll hear the high end completely change. So here is bridge pickup. I'm just turning it off and on out of the signal path.
Yeah.
It actually sounds bigger. And so if you do with the Echoplex and then take it out, it actually is taking, it's smoothing out. Now, we should also talk about this too. If anyone tells you an Echoplex is boosting it, they're probably wrong. And I've gone through enough of these things to find out. The funny thing is, some of them may boost it 1 dB, 2 dB, at most 2 or 3. A lot of them actually attenuate it, so they are actually pulling a dB out. But because it's getting louder in the mid range and dumping the high end, it sounds bigger, but it's actually cutting stuff. So some different eras of Echoplexes, you may find one that boosted, but it's all luck because there's no pot to do that. And as you know, there's no trimmer that lets you boost the dry. You don't get that. So it's all luck if you got an Echoplex that actually boosts the unity gain dry signal up. This is super nerdy. Holy crap! Sorry.
That's what we do. That's what we do.
Oh, it's super cool. And then you got, I mean, what phaser is back there?
That's an original early 70s script.
And what's the flanger?
I'm not using the flanger, but that's the chorus that MXR made.
Oh, okay. So here's the thing. So on the Echoplex, do you have? There's a delay on it right now, right? Set.
You know, and the fact that, and that's actually the mix all the way off because the amp is so loud that I can't turn the Echoplex down enough to get rid of even one delay out of it.
Okay, perfect. So, and then if you turn the phaser off, but you have a loop for it, right?
I have a loop for the phase 90.
So now kick the phase 90 in without the effect on.
Okay. So
and the Echoplex.
Okay. I'll just do it by hand here. So that's nothing. There's the phase 90. I'll turn it. You want me to turn it off, right?
Off. But just running through it.
Yep. We just want to hear the loading. Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, do you have it in a loop?
Yep. So I'm going to turn it off here because the loop has it on by default. So
right.
So now this is that loop with no phase. The phase 90's through it, but turned off. Okay. There's the Echoplex. I'll make sure. Well, there's all the tape hits when I turn it up. Okay. So there we go. So now we have phase 90 turned off in the path in the Echoplex. So here's nothing. Do we want to switch to the Charvel or leave it as a Strat? Your call.
Leave it a Strat.
Oh, switch to the Charvel. Fuck it.
Okay.
Go to the Charvel.
Why not?
Okay.
I mean, if we're gonna geek out like this, I may as well.
And by the way, we should talk about this guitar. This is actually a mahogany body, by the way.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, nice.
That they only did in 63. There's only a few of these that actually exist. So it's a real 63.
Oh, really? 63 with a mahogany body?
Yeah, there's not that many of them. I got it by accident, honestly. But we should talk about the Rasta guitar. The Circles guitar was mahogany. See, we can go down a really dark path.
Was it?
Yeah, heavy as fuck. That guitar was heavy. Okay, so we're back to this. All right, so again, amp's just on 10. Yeah, so okay, nothing. Phase 90. Phase 90 in. And then here's Echoplex. So just the difference in the phase 90 loading that signal, now both. And then nothing. But just listen to the tone of the phase 90, that loading of the circuit is different. Yeah. It's almost making it sound like the mid-range is more in your face a little bit because it's taking the hand out. Out of it. Echoplex in. Echoplex out, phase 90. None of it.
Oh, that sounds good.
So it sounds more like Van Halen with that stuff in.
With this stuff, with at least the phase 90 in, it does the right thing.
Yeah. I mean, well, it does. You know, he was running through. Well, here's the thing. He was running through a flanger.
Phase 90.
Probably humming like a son of a bitch like they do. Into a phase 90, into an Echoplex, which was hissing like hell. Yep. And, you know, and then
the G10.
Maybe the G10
sometimes, right? Maybe it was in there.
And I think that was to actually make up for some of the losses. At least that's what I was told.
Yeah, I heard the same thing, that it could be in, it could be out, depending on the venue, whatever. But it is. And here's the other thing. Again, we go back to this thing of a Marshall on 10 with a really short guitar cable and a guitar is a recipe for disaster. You could oscillate. It's going to squeal. So there is some amount of, we'll just talk about, a gentle amount of capacitance loading that you kind of need. And Dave, how many times have you made a rig with low capacitance cable just to find out, like, you know, you kind of want a little capacitance in the signal?
You know, there was a short time when I made rigs with, I found an interesting problem. There was a time when I made rigs with some George L cable, not with the ends, but actually soldered ends.
Right.
And which I like. It's a cool sounding cable, very clear. But occasionally with switchers and stuff, you'd run into an issue where you turn on a pedal and there was some weird oscillation or some weird hum or something. And you'd swap the cables to a normal, like not low capacitance cable.
Yeah.
It was gone. And it happened on more than one occasion with several different pedals, where so much so it's like, yeah, I'm not using this stuff anymore.
Yeah. I use a blend of this stuff, man. Right now it's a George L20, but I'm using other stuff I purposely higher capacitance. Like there's an MXR cable that's 20 feet, but that's double the capacitance as other stuff because I actually need it to load it down a little bit. If that marsh, and this is really geeky, and I'm not going to tell you the direction of this. And I mean, we can start flipping fuses on marshes. We're not going to do that. And I will tell you, I've done that with Eric Johnson at a sound check, and they're like, "Oh, dude, we shouldn't be fucking with this."
Oh,
I remember doing that. I remember doing that years ago, and the first time I did it, I showed it to someone, and he's like, "Oh my God, I hear it plain as day." And sure enough, he could always pick it.
Yep.
And he goes, "Now I can't unhear it.
You can't
unhear it. I can't unknow it."
Oh, dude, I know. Oh, dude, it's a real. I mean, I'm just gonna take it because I think it's amazing because he can't.
I've let some of that go over the years. I've let some of that go.
You have to,
over
man.
the years, and just go. You know what? Fuck it.
No, and you know what the best part is if you know what you like, then you're just going to be consistently putting it that way to begin with. So there's no guess. It's like, well, I'm not going to say doing that with the fuses, but I know this is the sound of that cable. It's always 20 feet to this. I always use this pedal in this setting. And it's more about consistency because what you want is repeatability because there's nothing worse than your rig sounding amazing one day and the next day it sounds like shit. And that used to drive me crazy. It's like, well, what did I change? Is it me or did I change something? Or is it a wall? I mean, I've done tests where I've actually taken vendors and listened to them at 119, 18, 17, 16, 115, 114, 113, down to 90. And you'd be amazed how different your amp sounds from what could be horrible at 123 down to 117 where they expect to be used at according to Fender. And that's a whole other route. I'm not saying anyone should be spending any time on this. Go make dinner, go hang out with your wife, or go on a date with a girl and get out of your room. I'm all for that, man. But
they should be messing with this stuff. That's why they're here.
Yeah, I mean, so I do this all day because it's like I'm looking for what is there some magical thing with this amp really like it really sounds good at 117. And yes, right now I'm running this amp at 89 volts, by the way. And I'm too lazy to rebias it. So I am sucking at that. I really should have rebiased it. You really need to commit to the 89 and rebias the thing. But I'm going to do that with the other Marshall here. But I think a lot of this is just knowing what things sound like. So I know later on, like, oh, if it's that kind of cable, that's 600 picofarad. It's probably going to sound dark. Or if you grab fuzz faces and, this stuff is an endless rabbit hole. And it has backfired because you should have seen one time.
I've forgotten more of this than which is good.
Yeah, and I think someone just
early on in my life there was a lot of these experiments, a lot.
Yeah,
and after a while, I kind of just started. I'm not going to do that.
No, and as much as we talk about is something true bypass, is it buffered? Is it loading? I mean, let's clear it all up right now for everybody, just so I don't feel like I'm speaking Greek or something. Really, I have 3 classifications for something. The pedal comes in, it has a relay, and it's kind of true bypass. So what comes in comes out. You've got the original stuff that would come in and still load the signal. So even if it was off, it was still attached to the circuit. So then you get this perceived drop in treble because it's like a Y cable splitting. It's cutting the impedance around. It's messing with it. And then you've got stuff that stays buffered. So any old Ibanez or Boss pedal would typically, once you ran through it, it kind of line drove your cables and actually would sound brighter, in some cases better.
Mhm.
So I feel like someone I just noticed the listeners like, so someone's like, so fuck true bypass. Well, sometimes, yeah. If you're going for a specific sound,
Maybe there's issues with this.
there's issue.
So-
Yeah. You
so
need a
look,
buffer
James is in
somewhere.
a room and the amps are right behind him and the cables are right there. So now you take this to a stage, and
It's 100 feet.
let's say for Van Halen or something, right? Take this to the stage. His pedal board was on stage. Off stage was the Echoplex next to the amps, which was kind of side stage, so it wasn't that far away.
Yep.
But if you have a long run out of your pedal board back to the amp and everything's true bypass, at some point in time, you might be going through, well, it just depends on how far.
Yeah.
A 40-foot cable, 50-foot cable, 60-foot cable. I don't know. Maybe you're using a 20-foot guitar cable and out of your pedal board is a 30-foot run. If everything's true bypass, it's a 50-foot guitar cable. Yeah. Which is bad.
It's mud.
So at least it's good to have a buffer on the output of your board.
Yeah.
Even if you wanted the loading effect of all those effects, like say those Echoplex and those two pedals were on your board. Say the Echoplex was there too, like up by your board.
Yeah.
After the Echoplex, driving a buffer to the amp would probably be a good idea.
Exactly.
If you're running long distance.
Yep.
Because one, the Echoplex stage is not really low impedance very much, and it won't drive cables very well.
Oh, it's horrible.
And so yeah. So then you think about, well, maybe there was an EQ involved in making up for all this stuff, which is sort of the opposite way to do it.
Oh, yeah.
It could work.
Good. And then we're gonna make
So
things.
maybe it was a 250K volume.
Yes,
Who the hell knows?
I know. We're worried about the cable. It's like, well,
But see, when I started thinking about this the other day, I'm like going, what if it was a 250K volume? Shit, now I want to put a 250K volume in my guitar and just check it out.
Right.
No, you should, man. It's I go through all this stuff back here. A funny test is, and I'm still guessing that, a PAF pickup. Everyone's like, well, it's a PAF in some of the edge guitar. Yeah, PAFs didn't have a lot of output. They're actually pretty weak sounding.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But he had it rewound though, supposedly.
Well, okay, but not at first. But
Not at first,
who knows?
right?
But Van Halen 1, you see a lot of pictures, and it was a double cream pickup, which was either a super distortion or a mighty might.
And that's like what, 12, 13, 14K.
Yeah, something like. Well, yeah, mighty might is basically a copy of a super distortion.
So yeah, so
Alnico 8. But then there was also rumors that he changed the magnets in those pickups.
Oh Jesus.
Which to Alnico 2, which is where you get that PV pickup and that other pickup that was 13K-ish, and
Alnico 2, which is like which is
14K,
the custom
14K, Alnico 2. That's where you kind of get that idea from. And then for a minute, Pete Thorne has a thing where it shows an old Duncan ad.
Oh, yeah.
And he got sued for this or something. There's a big rift that happened. That this was really early on. Duncan's listing their pickups, and it said Duncan Custom, and in parentheses next to it, Van Halen.
Oh.
And he got really pissed for that. So now Duncan Custom is a 14K pickup with a ceramic magnet. So that is essentially like the Mighty Might or the
Mighty Might
Super Distortion or something like that. But then he probably swapped magnets at some point in time, because there's talk of when he's swapping magnets around. And then also the 78 pickup is like what is that, 10K or something, or 9K? I can't remember. 9K, 10K, and that's Alnico 2. Now if you talk to Duncan, that's the first Van Halen rewind.
Oh, okay.
Slightly hotter PAF, basically.
Slightly hotter PAF, yeah. Yeah, there's any of the, and I've had seen where I have a set of one of his antiquities that are nice, and then I have there's a 335 back here that has PAFs in it, and they're not hot. They're really a hot single coil could beat the crap out of an old PAF almost if you're not careful.
Yeah, but then there are some PAFs that are 9K.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I don't think this one is. I actually have never done it. I've never put the 335 of PAFs into the Ed setup, which it'd be pretty funny to hear that. because I'm sure the gain's going to be off. Because this has probably 14K in it or something. But and all this stuff matters. It's all a big rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mind it. I mean, we just talking about the pickups and the strings, but then again, guitar's not going to sound right anyway, because it doesn't have it's got thicker strings on it, which made me start thinking about when you read the interviews that Ed talks about having a Strat and they thought it sounded bad or sounded too bright. It is pretty funny to just grab the Strat and try to play the Ed. I tuned this down a half step, but it's still tens with old pickups, and it's It actually doesn't sound that bad, but
it's brighter and thinner like a Strat would be.
Yeah,
right. It sounds still pretty good.
Oh, sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds good, but you could see where at stage volume it was probably squealing in, even in here.
You need to play some Yngwie with it.
Oh, I need the overdrive there, 250. Yeah, because more is more. Sorry. No, Yngwie is amazing. I wish I could. Well, this is the right color for Yngwie, that Olympic white duck yellow that he's so attached to. But so funny enough, and I'll tell you this: some point this guitar, someone did jab a humbucker in here. So under the pickguard is a big cutout for a PAF. The person I got this from Norm, but the guy he got it from was some experimental, guitar tech guy back in Texas. Had a bunch of really messed up stuff, but yeah. So this was sitting down there. He's like, "Well, it's not stock." As you look under the pickguard, big old cutout, and then I found out later this is mahogany. So this would be, it's a really odd sounding guitar, and I kind of want to put a PAF back in here. Get a different pickguard and go full.
That would be cool.
It'd be super cool. It's like mahogany and put a humbucker right here. It's got to be a cutout for it.
If you go to get the route, just get a different pickguard. It'd be an easy swap.
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking. Is just change out the pickguard.
Right.
Just for the hell of it, put it in there. Because I did see a really cool picture of Ed would look like a stock 62 Strat, 62 Sunburst.
Yeah.
And he had that pickup jabbed in there, turned a little bit.
Yep.
Which is great. Come on. You can't really beat that. See that. And unfortunately, I also watched some 45-minute video of some guy talking about how to paint the guitar.
Oh, I watched that.
Did you watch that? Yeah, it was pretty good. Yeah. I did go down that rabbit hole too.
Yeah, but you don't want to paint that guitar.
Yeah, I thought it was super interesting. But
by the way, I read this.
In true fashion, Ed would have painted that guitar.
Yes.
Because he didn't give a flying rat's ass.
I don't think he cared. I think he just put tape on stuff, painted it, and moved on,
Yeah. Crazy. That picture that we were looking at before. So there was a video recently came out that Chris Holmes, he said that Ed had borrowed his Destroyer.
Yeah.
And I believe that picture that we had was Chris Holmes' Destroyer. Thanks, Deja Blue.
Yeah, because Ed had ruined his.
Yeah.
Right. Either that or that was Ed's original before he ruined it.
Oh,
it's possible. Modern Vintage, James, for someone using a lot of amps with an aux into an Apollo, what other outboard gear do you recommend or find to be the best for guitarists, in particular to use alongside the aux and Apollo rack?
Outboard gear. That's a good question.
An amp switcher?
Yeah, that's that's exactly what I have. It's in another part of the room, but I have a little amp head switcher. The only bummer being some of the amps, you still have to get back there and change the impedance because some will only be hardwired to 4 or the Marshalls really want to see 8 or something. So for me, a lot of times it's using an amp head switcher. That comes in handy. Outboard gear. A lot of my stuff is in this other room that's cataloged, and I will pull stuff out as needed. But for me personally, I've been trying to play pretty much with nothing. And by that, I mean, like even right now, I've got some plate. Like my favorite sound now is that amp just turned up. Again, no pedals. Like I literally will take everything out of this and just go straight dry. So, but that's my own personal taste, is to force myself to play dry, because the more I thought about it, a lot of this stuff you hear on records is done in post. So I know I'm not saying the right thing, because really you should have everything and just plug it in as needed. But a lot of times, if you already have an Apollo, I would just make a virtual outboard setup. So like I would set up a bus in the console, and sometimes put like a Lexicon 224 or an EMT 250. But those are classic studio plates or digital reverb. So that's usually what I would do, is just once I get into the Apollo to the console, would be just to bus out to a Lexicon plugin or something, some really high quality stereo thing. Because really when I get to the amp, I really don't want anything digital going in front of the tube amp. Or I just want to use the original old pedals, get that vibe, and then do stuff in post. But then again, that could change next week, and maybe I'll have a whammy pedal and I'll be doing something upside down. You never know. That's a really good question, but and it's also me trying to get more out of the guitar and the amp, honestly. When do we go down this story? I did for a few years. I did some stuff with a label, and I had access to a lot of multi-tracks stuff that's still not public, but you realize a lot of our favorite guitar solos and tones, what they were dialing in, what they were playing was dry as a bone, man. There was no reverb on anything. There was no delay, no chorusing. And even on the Ed stuff, as you know, Dave, some of that stuff, that first record, Ed probably didn't even hear the plate. He was playing with what might have been a slap off. Yeah, just the amp. You know,
Echoplex.
Echoplex. That was it. Maybe one slap coming back at him.
Yep.
And so it's been a thing for me to just feel like I can get more comfortable and see how much tone I can get out of the amp. And this is another thing when I got my ass kicked, and I'm going to cop to this one too, is because I love the guy, but you would see these racks with Lukather, and you'd hear these ping pong delays and all this stuff. And at some point, if you get used to that on your sound, you almost can't play without it. And it can sort of stop you from being creative, because then you get, well, I can only feel creative or get my sound if I have this reverb and this delay and this thing. And then there was one time I saw Luke come in and he plugged right into an amp, and he just fucking killed. Oh yeah. You realize like, oh, he has it, but he doesn't fucking need it. You know? And you feel yourself going down that road like, oh man, I really need that delay and that reverb to get my singing lead sound. Nah, you actually don't. If you can just get down to a great guitar and a great amp, really anybody in this that's in here now bought one of your amps, dialed up a sound similar to Ed's, the intent would be there even with no reverb. You should just be able to get it without, again, don't let do I need to have the phase 90 turned off just to sound good? It would help. Maybe it's part of the special sauce part of it. Sure. But it's not going to be a replacement for sitting there for 2 days going and trying to get Mean Streets for a week, Yeah. Doing it nice and slow and working up to it. So yeah, I'm a grumpy old man today. I'm sorry. So it's like you have to buy all of this shit and then try to use it where it makes the most impact too. Because there's nothing cooler than having a great guitar sound that's completely just amp, fire it up, and then adding the perfect reverb on it. That's like some of the greatest tones in the world. And look at the first Van Halen. He's not even on the other speaker. He's in one speaker coming out one side. Mm-hmm. And it's still fucking phenomenal.
That's amazing.
Jesus. He got the left side and still killed it.
Sure. Taylor 315, thank you for the super chat. Great show, guys. Can James play the intro to Mean Street?
It would probably require me PayPaling him his $9.99 back. I got done with it. Do you know what? It's the
other guitar.
Yeah, the one thing you find out is if you're working too hard for something, it's like it's like trying to practice Holsworth on a guitar with 12s. It doesn't work. You have to give your hands the ability to do the effortless thing. So like even I could probably sort of fake it, that's really the hardest part. And to get the amp to get those harmonics to pop out. So I know enough of it to get through that. But I am by no means good at it, or should I ever have been playing that in public like I just did, because it will forever live on fucking YouTube until I'm dead. But you know what? But that's the fun of it, dude. I don't care. I really want to chase that tone, and even the fun part is working on this and then not playing it on this guitar, that amp, and doing some of those techniques on a telly, on a Fender amp, something different. Yeah, that's half the fun of this. I mean, there's no more fun than just feeling like, oh man, I figured out the special things Ed was doing, or it could be something any number of great players do. So that's more of the fun of it for me. Yeah, so I'm really bad at that. You know, I can really hack my way through a whole bunch of that stuff, but really, it's pretty amazing for someone who didn't. See how do we put it this way? It seems like Ed was just so original at all the stuff he did. You know, it still warrants real discussion on how he sort of didn't have this baggage, because you hear him say, "Man, I was really into Eric Clapton." Dude, how are you such a Clapton fan, but you don't play like a Clapton ripoff at all?
Right. No.
You know? You have a touch of the blues in there, but you still came out the other side, your own guy. And even when he was listening to Alan, he picked a little bit of the vibe up of Alan, but there's no specific thing where you hear, oh, he's literally playing an Alan riff, but the inspiration was there. So if anything, for me, I've got a little more inspiration from Ed again. And I go through waves, and I'm sure some of us do, where you go through waves where maybe let's just go there. How many times have you listened to Van Halen so much that you need a week off? You just come back to it later. Because we've listened to this stuff a lot, you know? Right. But then you come back with fresh eyes and go, oh, man, I really should just work on Mean Street. I really should just get that down. And that's the fun part of it. So again, and I still take crap for this. This is not the most subtle color of a Charvel either. It's pretty loud, but I don't care. It played great. It had what I wanted it to do. And that's the other thing is I hate when I feel like I'm being a tone snob. Like, oh, it has to be a vintage Marshall. It has to be a San Dimas Charvel. You know, so I have tried to get over that. Says the guy in front of a real script Phase 90 and an old Echoplex and two old Marshalls. Yeah, so you can pretty much say, screw you, dude. Because, yeah, I'm sitting in front of the gear, but I also have a little practice amp in the living room that's a cheap made little, in fact, it's my buddy Terry Budding. It's funny because it's not Stevie Freyette. They're made under the VHT name. These little 6-watt like tube amps. Mm-hmm. And I'll just play through that and work on it, you know? But I think the only thing is to try to, at least I tried to see where Ed was coming from. And I can't really find anything else that seems like, oh, listen to Mean Street. Oh, he's obviously copying some Django Reinhardt thing. No, I don't. Who knows where did he get this stuff? I don't know.
It's mind-blowing, really.
Well, he said I would have never done half the shit I did if I would ever been trained.
Yeah. It's exactly. You ever been trained? Yeah, no, it's exactly it. You don't get a Holsworth or a Van Halen or a Hendrix if they had been following the typical Mel Bay guitar method volume 1. You know, and I think that's another fun thing is to remember is I'm trying to let the baggage go. You know, it's just go ahead and play like you're going to play. Because that's the one thing, too, is, you know, I've heard other players who are fantastic players at country, but you don't really want to see that guy trying to play rock. It's just not comfortable with it, you know? Mm-hmm. But so I try to learn everything. But I think someone asked what model Charvel this is, and I wish I was better. I think it might just be called the San Dimas model. Like, this is not even the most expensive one that was in the building there.
Yeah, I got to get to a couple of.
There's some super chats probably that were completely ignoring.
Music Therapy Laz, I missed it. I can't put it on the screen, but he said, "I'm a Fender Confetti medium pick player as well, Dave. Love you, man." Carl Engstrom, also thanks for the super chat. He said, "I dig on pointed picks these days, and actually have been on high action guitars because I'm too lazy to work on my guitars these days." Okay. Jim Bob Severts says, "Can you hot rod an orange OR 80s?"
No, wait, that's an old amp. No. You want to just leave those. Those are kind of cool. The overdrives, the old orange overdrive 80s. They're really cool. One time I worked on a combo for Chris Novoselic. Ooh, I don't know. I thought that was kind of cool. He had an orange case for it too.
Wow. Okay, there's a couple more that I missed. Okay. Where am I? Let's see. Bill Lima. Hey, Dave, do you have any plans for another single channel 100 watt amp aside from the Phil X Sig, something like a Pink Taco 100?
Not at this point. No, not unless I do a vintage inspired Plexi kind of amp. But I'll probably do a 50 and not 100.
Okay.
But maybe I'll do 100 too.
More is more.
Please buy a power station with it.
Yeah.
PS100, the new one.
Yep.
Killer.
Let's see. Modern vintage. Dave and James, any experience with Wizard amps? I have a BE100 Deluxe, Butter Slacks, and Small Box 50. I wonder how they compare to their comparable Wizard models.
I haven't played a Wizard in a long time, but I remember them being very Angusy. I think that's because that dude works for it.
Loud.
Yeah, loud and
really loud, really loud.
Yeah.
Good sounding amps. Good sounding amps. I mean, they're not they're not an apartment amp.
No.
Well, unless you got Knox.
Yeah. Or you hate your wife or something. I don't know.
You know, yeah, you're gonna get thrown out of the apartment pretty quick.
Yeah.
Great. He makes great amps. I wish he'd come on the show.
It's just Rick. Is that
Rick,
the guy's
Rick St. Pierre?
Pierre, yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I remember a million years ago hanging out with him at a NAMM show party at some suite.
Oh God, do we want to go there? Oh.
and Jim Schoening, who was with Rocktron at the time, so this would have been late 80s, early 90s. We'd always hang out. We were drinking, and Jim had a suit on and a tie still from the NAMM show. This is after dinner, and after we've been drinking for a while, and I remember I cut his tie off.
Oh,
I took a pair of scissors and cut his tie in two.
Why?
Shit.
Because he was wearing a fucking tie.
Yeah. Wear a tie. Who wears a tie?
He's wearing a fucking tie, and it's after the thing, and it's like,
that's funny.
Mark,
he found it very amusing. Also,
I guess, Mark, have you ever experienced a full-on NAMM? Maybe it's not.
Oh yeah. I met you at NAMM.
But I'm talking the 3 a.m. when you were trying to get right.
That's the old man days.
Yeah.
No, I haven't
experienced the younger days.
No, I'm too old for that shit now. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just remembering days where like, holy shit, where's Reinhold? Fuck, where's Stevie? Oh goddamn. And you're just around a hotel.
Where do they go together?
They go together. And like, oh fuck, we're all going to jail. That kind of NAMM show. Yeah, when you're, oh dude, yeah.
Oh yeah, where you had, oh
fuck.
I remember something in the early 90s when I was doing it with Josh and Bruce Egnator. We're sharing a booth. And I remember going out, and at the time I had this thing for Sambuca at the time. And I was drinking Sambuca, but everyone was coming up and go, "Hey, can I buy you a drink? Can I buy you a drink?" "Yeah, you can buy me a Sambuca." "Okay, I'll bring you a Sambuca." But that was like 10 people later that bought drinks, and by the time the next day rolled around, the worst possible hangover imaginable. I still to this day, and this is fucking a century ago. Till this day, I remember this hangover. And the worst part is you had to go. I was working at the booth. So you had to go in the booth in the morning and work and be around people. It's like you've already consumed way more ibuprofen or aspirin or whatever you were taking than you could possibly imagine.
Oh,
You'd already drank all the water there was. You already just like, well, maybe if I just have another beer or two, I'll feel better. That didn't work either. It felt like someone was sitting on your head all day long until around 5 o'clock, almost the end of the day, when the hangover finally went away.
But then it starts all over again.
And then it starts all over again. Yeah.
Right. The
circle. And you're young and dumb enough to go do it.
Oh right. No, dude! This, you start talking about. I used to love when I go back to the booth, and there was one specific NAMM show. I remember getting to the booth late, and somebody goes, "Fuck, dude! Fishbone came by here looking for you." Like the band, they're like, "That dude knows how to party." I'm like, "Thank you," because I don't remember it, but man, I must have had a good time.
That's awesome.
No, sorry. Maybe I've said too much. I'm ruining my own reputation myself right now.
If that shit happens now at a NAMM show, it's like if you have a tie one on one night at the NAMM show, it's like, yeah, now I'm going to bed early, guys. Forget about dinner the next night. It's like, yeah, go to bed safe.
It's a whole different ballgame.
Oh yeah.
And then maybe by the day after, you're like, okay, I feel better now. We can go out to dinner now.
Yeah, exactly.
Vinny Moretti gave us a super chat. Thank you, Vinny. Says, hey, Dave and James, is it possible today to pass all of your knowledge down to others to keep all this incredible tradition and experience alive? Do you guys see interest in learning and continuing all that you guys do?
Oh boy.
Yeah, I can take a stab at that first. I think the first step to that is literally what Dave and Mark are doing now, which is, getting everyone to talk in a loose format and just letting things go where they go. I don't know if it would be very fun to read this in a book because it would look very clinical. I don't know. That's a great question.
Well, the answer is, Vinny, is we're doing it with this show.
Exactly. I think this is it.
Or we're trying to. We're trying to pass on remembrances and knowledge and stuff that is long forgotten, really.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, I think for as advanced as we are in the internet today, I actually believe guitar players know less than they ever have.
Yeah.
Do you find that, James?
Yeah. And this is no slight on anybody. Because I think all of us in our age bracket, even now, I'm sure we were annoying to the guys who were a generation before us, going like,
"Yeah, sure. Man,
what was it like when you had a whole room full of tweed high-powered twins, and were you using, So it's hard for me to get mad at anyone who's now only maybe 21 years old, and somehow thinks that a dumble can be put into a pedal because someone told them it sounds just like a dumble and a pedal. It's like, well. Most people have never even seen a dumble, and how could you be mad at someone? Because at least they know that was a fun amp to get a tone for. Because even for me, and I will just go there too, is the age I was brought up in, I hate to say it, racks were pretty fashionable in the mid '80s when I spent all my money trying to buy I had Roland SDE 2500s and 3000s and SPX 90. I got more money from gigs and bought an 80A MP1, was putting things in racks. And honestly, that lasted till about 88 or 89. I'm like, holy crap, this Marshall sounds awesome. And I threw all that other stuff away. But I think you have to find this path and go through that. But what ended up happening was, and technology is amazing. And even I feel guilty when someone's like, oh man, that sounds just like a Marshall. It's like, man, or that sounds just like that cabinet or that mic or that chorus pedal. It's like, man, if you really want to get into this, man, you should go play the real stuff and experience it. There's no substitute for, and I used to do this with friends, going to music stores on a Saturday morning and going to, maybe it's harder to do now with eBay and Reverb, but you'd go to vintage stores and you'd go searching out new gear or old used gear and go finding all this stuff. In fact, I'll tell you, we used to have we called them tone parties. And a whole bunch of us would get together on a Tuesday night and round up all the gear we bought or rented or borrowed, and we'd listen to it all. Just a bunch of dudes and we close the music store down at 6, and we'd stay there all night. And one night it would be, okay, everybody bring your tube screamers, and we'd shoot out multiple 808s and TS9s, and we'd put them on a switcher, and we'd blind A, be like, okay, which one do you think's the old one, or which one's the reissue? You know, because as much as I love the fact that we're on YouTube now, you know, it's not like the homework used to be a hell of a lot harder to do back then. You know, you had to get the gear, you had to play it, you had to feel it and touch it. And so I don't know if there's a good answer for that. Although I'm happy to see a lot of younger players embracing the gear that now is old. It was old when we were getting it. Now it's just double old, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if I'm giving you a good answer for this, but I think in forums like what you have here, Mark, maybe a lot of the stuff that Rick Beatos is trying to do, maybe documenting and talking to players. It's one of the things that bummed me out about guitar magazines in print in the 90s. It's like, man, as I said the same thing 25 years ago, man, who's going to get all these great stories out of these guys? You know, who's going to find out what was on that record, or what's the special sauce pickup that's in that guitar? Was there some reason the Echoplex did that? Because I had to find that out honestly on my own. There was one day I was at home with this gear, and I remember putting a Boss pedal in front of my amp, and my ears were like, why do I sound brighter now? And there was no book that explained what a buffer did to a kid who was a teenager in his room. My ears just went, oh, my clean sound got a little better all of a sudden with that Boss pedal in it, and it sounds darker when I take it out. Or when I got my first Echoplex for $70-something from a neighbor, and I plugged it, I'm like, man, this thing sucks. It's noisy and it's got no high end. But then you realize, like, okay, well, that sucks because it doesn't sound like it did when it wasn't in the past. But there are people who made that its own thing, and you find out what it was used for. And you know, and I'm now a 50-year-old man still doing the same crap I was doing when I was 12. So it's never going to end, and you just have to want to get up in the morning and decide, man, maybe I should just do some research and figure out what is the coolest overdrive for me, and listen to borrow pedals from friends and try them. Because come on, Dave, how many times did you just have to there was no YouTube for you to go, let me see if somebody's already done an A/B comparison between.
You buy it and go, I heard it so and so uses this. Let me buy this and try it, and then you go, fuck, I hate this.
I hate this thing. Or you go, dude, you got one of those things? Can you come over? Can you bring it over so we can try it?
Mom, I swear it'll be the last thing I ask you for.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, dude, I know.
Really, just this one amp, amp, man, please.
This one, oh, dude, you should. Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you right now, I still kick myself because I was using an overdrive special Dumble in the early 90s that would have, I didn't have the $3,000 to keep it, which was what it was at the time.
Wow.
And it went to Japan. it was an orange suede Santa Cruz era overdrive special.
Wow. Yeah,
and I was taking this thing to the shittiest bars and jamming on it. I didn't care. It was just a cool amp back then. It didn't have the mystique it did now, because it just sounded.
That one really hurts, doesn't it?
That hurts. It hurts to think, man, I wish I should have kept that. But at the time, I had a twin reverb that honestly sounded 80% as much as that some of the Dumbles did. It's a big clean sound, some of them, and they had Fender transformers. You look at the parts, and a lot of it was Fender. And I'm not saying I didn't love that amp, but it's like, for the money I would have spent on that, I bought a Plexi Marshall. I bought 2 more Blackface Twins. I bought a shitload of other gear. I'm like, $3,000? I just paid $800 for an entire Marshall stack at that time.
Right.
So the math in I still have it, you know.
My favorite 50-watt Plexi that I've had for years that I refuse to sell ever, I got for $300.
Dude, exactly. $300. Yeah, in fact, we should talk about it. Let's keep going down that path, because, again, I feel like I'm lucky. The other Marshall back here, because I think we were talking about it earlier too, Mark, was there's 2 behind me right now. The one I'm playing through is a Super Tremolo, 100-watt. The one over here is one I found in a music store in Berkeley. Must have been $1,400 or something, $1,500, and nobody wanted this stuff back then. And for the longest time, I thought it was a fake because it had a badge on it that I'd never seen any other Marshall have, which is a blacked out logo. And it wasn't until later on when I got a Marshall book and I was reading, I'm like, oh, that looks like my logo. And then they called them Black Flag Marshalls, which right now is probably one of the rarest Marshalls you can find anywhere. They were made for like one or 2 years, not that many of them all. And but that's again, the only reason I got that is because I went to a music store, went through the used junk, and I'm like, man, that thing sounds cool. And I feel like I miss those days because now everything is on Reverb, and you don't get to stumble across something or go with your buddy and just go find crap. You know?
It's hard. It's hard to stumble upon gear anymore. Everybody thinks they have a gold mine too, and
Google mine, or the minute they find something that they're on their phone Googling it or eBaying, it's like, oh, that's this rare. Back then we bought shit and took a roll on, and then you realize a lot of folks who made things popular stumbled. I mean, what was the story with Landau and that? I hate to say stupid, but that damn Arion chorus. It was just a pedal sitting in the back of an amp he stumbled upon. He thought it sounded cool for his wobbly chorus.
Yeah,
but it was a cheap pedal, nothing special about it.
Right.
You know?
Hey, question for Dave from Eric Johnson. Can the bigger amps 50 watt plus sound as good at low volumes as the 20 watt versions, such as a JJ Junior or PT? And can the amps feel as good at low volumes as the 20 watt versions?
Yes.
I was going to say yes myself.
Absolutely yes.
Yeah.
It's almost the same. At that point, you're not distorting a power section at all. You're playing quiet. So it's really like the same preamp going through a lower wattage power amp, but you're not distorting it at all. So it's just a power amp, just at a very quiet volume.
Yeah.
I mean, they might sound slightly different, but the bigger amp will actually sound bigger. A little bit bigger. Although our 20 watt kind of screams.
Interesting you said that because honestly, a 50 watt Marshall, a 100 watt Marshall, the 100 watts not that much louder. It just sounds tighter.
Yeah, it's not that much louder.
It's not that much volume. 3 dB, 6 dB a much, but for some reason the 100 watt just sounds bigger and beefier because it's not crapping.
And if you're dropping it with a variac, then it's quieter anyway. So
so you double winning.
Yeah. Gonzalo Cordova's question for James: are you emulating the Bricasti M7 or the Lexicon PCM 42?
If I'm doing it in console, I actually use the 224. And if he's asking me, are we going to emulate again?
No, I think he was saying what you were using.
Okay. So right now, only thing I'm playing through is a plate 140, an EMT 140 right now. Just a real basic plate. Again, it's coming back to me just getting back into my Van Halen thing of just a simple plate panned over, which again, it's not coming out in stereo, but you can't really beat a plate reverb, man. A really great studio quality plate. You know, I would typically just use that or the spring in an amp if I just turn the amp up or something. But
we got a good comment from Spanish Castle Magic.
Cool name. Yeah.
James Santiago, so inspired by your tone videos and tutorials from the Voodoo Lab days. You are a legend, sir. I've watched all those videos at least 1 million times trying to copy your ridiculous tones.
Thank you. I'm sorry if you've bought any gear that you hated later or ruined your life in some way, but thank you for tolerating all of that stuff. You know, it's
L. Scott Music, thank you. James, have you ever figured out a tone or technique only to find you match the sound, but in a very different way from the original artist?
Okay, let me take that in again. You know what? Okay, so let me see.
Have you ever figured out a tone or technique only to find that you match that sound in a different way from the original artist?
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of times you can get the sound of something without actually having the real gear or the exact gear. And I'll need Dave to back me up on this. Is honestly, if I take any black face amp and put it on 10 and maybe have some EQ or something, I can probably fool you and make you think it's a Marshall turned up too. You can there's a little bit of play on certain things.
Yeah, depending on what that amp's going through speaker wise,
right? The speaker, like the guitar.
If you put a basement head, let's say a basement head, blackface basement head into a Marshall 4x12 cabinet with greenbacks,
yeah,
crank it, and then maybe you tweak it a little bit in EQ. Yeah, it's gonna sound pretty.
It's ballpark.
It can sound pretty ballparky, Marshall-y.
Yeah, it's
sure.
Yeah, it's there's if you tweak it a little bit. And there's also another concept that and this comes in recording a lot of times, is if you have to work so hard to get something because maybe you don't have the right mic or the right mic preamp. A lot of times when you think about great drum sounds or a great guitar sound, is because it's just that microphone running into a Neve, and maybe the EQ is not even turned on, but there's a sonic footprint to that mic already, and that mic pre that just sounds like that. So sometimes you have to work extra hard because, well, I'm trying to use some ribbon mic and some oddball preamp, where you realize like, well, the person who set it up in the first place never worked that hard. They just put a 57 and put it on a Neve, and they were done.
Yeah. Also, it really, over the years recording and stuff, it really, you come to realize that once you have, let's say, that API mic preamp and the 57
and the 50,
and then a great converter, a good converter that's kind of neutral, like not too, once you have that good gear versus, say, taking that 57, your early days of recording 57 into a Mackie console preamp, into an old I don't know, some old sound card, that you had in early days.
Yeah.
You're thinking, yeah, I can get that sound, I can get that sound. And you're constantly moving the mic.
Yep.
And you're constantly trying to get, and in the end, you could possibly get a good tone.
Yeah.
It's possible. You can get something out of nothing if you got good ears.
Yep. But you're going to work really
hard.
Yeah.
Right.
Then you get that API mic preamp and you get the good D to A to D converter, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, you know what? I can take 57 and put it anywhere on the cone.
Yeah.
Center, off, whatever, and everywhere sounds good.
Exactly.
It's effortless. And then it's like, okay, well, I want it a little brighter, a little closer to the cone. I want it a little darker, a little further from the cone. And then it's like effortless.
Isn't that what messed up about it? Is it? Yeah, it's exactly what it is.
Because it wasn't that hard. In the old days, it wasn't that hard because guess what? Here's what you had. The average studio is a Neve console. Great mics.
Great mic breaks. Great room. Done.
Great room. And well, that was the tape. So,
Tape, yeah, that extra.
So everything sounded good. It just, you pull it up. Wow, that sounds great. Okay, great. Go, move on. Keep record. Boom.
Stuart Rose. Favorite chorus pedals, units, vintage and new. Obviously can't ask the $64 question. When is Luna for Windows 10 coming?
Oh, man. They don't tell me stuff like that. They don't tell me. No, I'm kidding. I wish I knew. I don't. Even if I'm being honest with you, I don't know. Because in all honesty, those meetings aren't any fun for me when we talk about Windows platforms. I'm in another meeting busting up vintage gear, annoying engineers.
There you go.
Those are the meetings I go to. And in complete honesty, I mean that in all seriousness. Yeah. And best vintage chorus units. You know what? There's nothing I like more than just if I'm going to do an analog chorus. I took out that one. That's the box. I liked those, and it's just because they're so in your face, like the old yellow MXR ones too. Those original yellow ones.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, those are cool.
Yeah, those super cool. Old.
I like the Boss
CE1.
CE again. I use a CE1 sometimes too, just because when you turn on, it sounds like, or using it as like a gentle, or using a Univibe, but in the actual vibrato setting. So it's just a little pitch.
Yeah.
You can get some fun stuff out.
Boss
Dimension
C2.
D.
Oh
Which
yeah,
one?
C2.
C2.
C2s are great.
I like the Dimension.
There's a couple Ibanez ones that were really cool too.
That's right. Yeah, there was a couple of those. Yeah, Dimension D. Here's another. Well, just side note is probably the only time you've ever heard Stevie Ray Vaughan use a chorus was a Dimension D, but it was because it was put on in post and all that David Bowie stuff.
Right.
Because you don't think you think chorus, you don't think Stevie Ray, but yeah, I think Let's Dance and China Girl all has Dimension D on it. And again, why do I know that? Because I don't have a life. Sorry, because I do this all fucking day.
It's
guys.
It's too bad that questions like that are not on Jeopardy. You know.
I know. Did Stevie Ray Vaughan ever use a chorus bell? No, Stevie Ray Vaughan didn't. But actually, honestly.
All right. So Brendan Mowat Smith says, "Thanks for the super chat."
Oh, Brendan.
No.
Flipping fuses thing.
Okay, I will tell you the funny story to that. Brendan's a great player out in Canada. There. So this was a few years ago. I go to Eric Johnson sound check. He's in the middle of it. He stops playing for a second. He looks like, should we flip the fuse around? And I'm just like, no, fuck. So we do it.
Wait, back up because your video broke up there for a second.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the last time I got messed with, it was an Eric Johnson sound check, and I stopped flipping stuff around ages ago. But he was in the middle of it. His Marshall wasn't sounding good. And he just looks over and stops the band. He's like, we should flip the fuse around. So we get up on stage and we took a little light and we flipped the fuse around. It's like, that sounds a little better.
James.
And then, and again, I think sometimes you can make
still there,
yourself.
Dave?
Yeah. Did I lose you?
Okay.
We're all here.
Did I lose you, Mark? Testing.
Yeah, your internet, James, froze there for a second.
Oh, sorry.
Not for me, it didn't.
For you, it didn't, Dave?
No.
Oh
man,
it must be me.
Maybe it's you.
Maybe it's no.
Okay. So anyway, Eric Johnson.
So we start flipping the fuse. We kind of feel like it's getting better, but then here's how karma got us is on the third try going back and forth because it was a stage that had a drop behind. We're playing with the cap, and then we dropped the fuse in the fucking cap. So now we're on the floor looking for the damn fuse cap. So. All that to say, we wasted 10 minutes of our life on the floor looking for the damn cap for the Marshall and trying to find the spring that goes into the cap fuse thing. And then we put it back and nobody cared. We went back to playing and to life. So yeah, you can do the same thing if you start
to make a difference.
It could make a difference. Will it make a big enough difference? You can tell yourself it does. And there have been many times the one that can bite you in the ass is your brain wants to hear a difference. There are a lot of books written about this sort of thing. You can be sitting there at a console, and I've done it, where you're sitting at a console and you're putting the mic up and you're moving the EQ, and you realize like, oh fuck, the EQ is not even in the signal. Because a lot of those channels, those EQ, like the Neves, have a button that pulls the EQ in and out of the preamp. And there've been many times where I'm moving the EQ, I'm like, oh, that could be it, and I realize the button's not even in, because your brain's telling you heard a difference. So. I don't know if that's I don't know if I just helped or made that worse, honestly. You know, you can tell yourself it all makes a difference, but I think that's probably why I do the things and why Dave does the things he does is you do these experiments to go, did it really matter? Is it, and even if it did matter, is it worth you doing something, wiring it differently, putting something this?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, here's the thing. Ultimately, in the end, whether it matters or whether it doesn't, and people think I'm crazy, but I have proven this to a bunch of people before. Whether it matters or not, the thing is that from day to day, where you're playing, the room you're in is going to make a far bigger difference.
Yeah,
the humidity of the room that day is going to make your speakers sound different.
Yep.
Hell, maybe even the direction of your guitar cable might make more of a difference, or the brand of your guitar cable. That surely makes a difference.
Amazing.
Yep. It absolutely can.
But at some point in time, you just may be like, okay, fuck this.
I'm going to go play.
I'm going to play. If I'm getting good sound, I'm getting a good sound. Great.
Play, but I'm gonna completely comp to if you're the person who plays your amps like Ed did, or like Clapton or Eric does when your lead sound is really dependent on that amp being on 7 or 8. The wall voltage fluctuation will absolutely make your amp sound different day to day. And every venue you hit in, depending on maybe your sound check sounds like this, but then when people are there and the light system comes on, the stage voltage can drop and you can sound different, you know?
Sure.
But I mean, there's still the stories of Neil Young swearing he could tell the wall voltage that day on his Tweed Deluxes. Because he used the amp.
Coolest thing in recent years, I worked on a Neil Young amp. And it was the Baldwin Exterminator that he uses. Have you ever seen one of these fucking things?
Oh my God.
I've never seen one?
I don't think I have. I feel like
okay, now you need to look it up.
Oh shit.
Baldwin Exterminator. So it's about, I don't know, it's about 5 feet tall.
Oh shit.
Right. And there's like I forgot, there's like 6 speakers in it, but it's different size speakers. I can't quite remember if it's a 15 and a 12 and like a little horny thing, or if it was like a 12, a 10 and a little horny thing. So it's huge, right? It's a solid state amp. I do believe it's a stereo amp. And it kind of looks like it came out of an old bowling alley.
Yep, I just found one. Yeah, that's gnarly.
And I get to work on this amp. And the tech brought it. Some other guy worked on it and rebuilt it. And it just doesn't sound right. There's something wrong. And we're just like, oh my God, what are we going to do? But yeah, I'll work on it. So me and a buddy are looking at it, working on it, and like, well, the amps seem okay. They scope out okay. It seems all right. It seems good. It sounds fucked up though. You know, like and finally we realized that the other tech had wired the speakers out of phase.
Oh fuck.
So it sounded awful. The minute you put the speakers in phase and don't do it properly, and this huge thing, it's like close to 5 feet tall, right? It's fucking tall.
Dude,
the funny thing about it is it has one handle and it's on the top. Like, what do you need? The Game of Thrones like giant to carry this around for you or something? How do you move this thing?
No, remember the
coolest looking piece. But when we finished it and we played through it, even though it's a solid state amp, it was the coolest guitar tone. It had like reverb and
there it is, right?
Yep, there it is. Along with his whizzer on top of the deluxe. Yeah.
Yeah, the big one. So you can see all the speakers that are in it, the little and 12 and the 15. So it's like 2 stereo pairs in the thing. That's bigger than it actually looks in this picture. It's pretty big. And that's one we worked on. But when you played it was amazing sounding. It did this unbelievable chimey, semi-broken up clean tone that with just reverb, and there's a trem and stuff, and it just had this vibe, man. It was really cool. One of the weirdest amps I've ever worked on, but it was really cool. I get it. Evidently uses it for kind of the low end of the rig.
No shit.
Uses it in conjunctions with the deluxe and stuff.
Oh shit.
Kicks it in.
Question from BV, and thanks for moderating. BV's great for helping us out. Mark, can you ask James if he has framed the Larry Carlton original hand-done chart from the ABC recording sessions and hung it next to the Tweed Deluxe yet?
I have not yet. Due to the COVID, I haven't been able to go frame shopping. And for just to fill you guys in, there was a Julian's auction by the estate of a woman who had passed away, but she was Walter Becker's girlfriend in the 70s. She also worked at ABC Records here in LA and ended up managing the recording sessions for all the Steely Dan stuff Larry Carlton was on. She passed away around 1980, but the family recently found all her stuff, and within all that stuff were all the charts that were used for those records, a lot of them. So I ended up, I can actually take it out. It's sitting right here on top of my desk. if anyone's curious. And then there's actually a funny Larry Carlton story that goes along with it. I'll show you. But in this little simple folder is, and it's in a Ziploc as well, is the original hand-done chart for that morning session called Don't Take Me Alive. That's one of Larry's, probably second to Kid Charlemagne, one of his best solos on the Larry Carlton, the Steely Dan records. So this is 4 pages. It's in a little airtight Ziploc. But yeah, it folds out into a 4-page thing. And I just really like that solo, and I thought it would be cool.
Go get it framed.
Gotta get it framed. Yeah, all 4 pages coming. You can see it's all been yellowing. It's been sitting in a locker for God knows how long, but it's all hand done because no one ever really saw the charts for these sessions, and so I was able to get it from them. And then, funny enough, when we saw the Tweed Deluxes, through Travis, who's a great bass player, his son Travis Carlton, I went to go see Larry play, and Travis was like, "You want to come hang out with my dad backstage?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, I want to come hang out with Larry. He's great." And I finally asked Larry, I'm like, "So, dude, you got to tell me, what were the mics you used on all the Steely Dan stuff? How were you micing the Tweed Deluxe?" That's all he ever used. There was nothing on it. 335 Tweed Deluxe. He looks at me and goes, "Man, I don't know. I didn't care. I was there to play." And seriously, and it was not being a dick. He was just like, "Okay, no, nothing." Doesn't remember, didn't care, was just there to play the session. So that was one of those fun kicks in the ass. Is like, one of the greatest session guys of the 70s did not give a shit what mic, where it was put. He's like, "Oh, that's what we had the engineers for, man. I just stayed in the room and played."
Yep.
Great.
If that's not a kick in the ass too, that right there. But yeah, I do have an old 50s Tweed Deluxe in another corner of the room there. And probably the most adult guitar I ever bought was an actual 335 with PAF. So this is that. It's actually, and funny, we could talk about Larry's guitar. His wasn't even the good year. He had like a 67 with a tiny nut and had the bridge. Yeah, he replaced all of that. But
what year is this one?
This is around 60, 61. So it still had, so they're still PAFs. It's all stock.
Mm-hmm.
And this thing sounds ridiculous. And it's, again, it was my adult man purchase. I feel like.
And then you got to play it through the Van Halen rig now.
Oh, that's true. We should just play it.
Since it's in your hand.
Since it's in my hand, like what would a classy 335 with PAF sound like in the whacked Marshall? Definitely not that gainy. Funny enough. I should use the other pick too. Hold on. Yeah, it's missing the. There's that mid-range honk, I think, in the hollow body thing. Actually, there's not a lot of gain at all. You actually can get away with the blue song. Wow, that's not gaining at all. Funny enough, not much there at all. So you can hear that. But you know what? That's one of those things where I think it goes through phases, and even when we were talking about Lukather, all of his sessions, a lot of his great stuff was still even just a deluxe reverb with mods too. There wasn't anything that crazy about it.
Right.
All that Michael Jackson stuff, even the stuff he's on with Eddie doing Beat It, those weren't heavily affected. Those are probably another deluxe just with a mod on it, nothing super heavy. Although I do somewhere have a Valley Arts with EMG 81s and the preamps and all the crap in it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anyone remembers that stuff,
Oh, yeah. I do.
Yeah, a concentric pot, like a bass and a middle boost and a treble, But,
This is a funny comment. Ben Tom, thanks for your question here. It says, I spent a day with Eddie Kramer. He said Jimmy tried 9 fuzzes and hated them. Eddie gave him the first fuzz again, but said it was the shit, and Hendrix believed him and said it sounded great.
Yeah. Okay. So I do have a. This was maybe 2001 or 2001. For that same Line 6 project, one of the jobs there was to go to New York for a week, and we went through all the Hendrix tapes. So that was one of those things of like, I pulled up Spanish Castle Magic and just listened to the guitar mics.
Wow.
Yeah, and shit like Wind Cries Mary, Purple Haze. And then you realize like that dude could just play a Marshall turned up and kill it with a Strat.
You know what's always really interesting that you find with all those old records and when you isolate guitar tracks and stuff of how many mistakes are actually in it.
Oh my God, so many mistakes.
Like all over the place. Like you're like listening to it going, oh, I never really heard that. But it becomes in the track, you don't notice it, or it becomes part of the track like it. But when you hear it isolated, you're just like, oh God, that's kind of sloppy.
That's totally sloppy.
But that's the magic. It's like I remember I pulled up a right before P. Thorne went out on his he did this tour with this the rock show in England, and it was they played covers essentially. Mm-hmm. It's like a big production cover band, so to speak, tribute or whatever you want to call it, but really good musicians and everything. And right before I go, hey, did you ever hear this? And it was some I can't remember which song it was, some Who song, maybe Baba O'Reilly or something. Oh yeah, and it was just the isolated guitar track.
Oh dude, that one that sounds like an almost direct. If that's the one I'm thinking about.
Yeah, it's really nasty sounding guitar.
Oh, and dude.
And he goes, oh, that'd be great because I got to learn that song. And he goes, oh, this is great. Wait, I'm getting stuff that I didn't realize was even in there, and of little nuances of it, and listening to it, you just realize that isolated, it sounds just like ass.
Oh God, no!
In the track, it sounds amazing.
It's fucking
it's mixed and in the track, and it has some reverb, and it's like, wow, that sounds great. It's like you wouldn't imagine it any other way. Isolated, you're just like, wow, that's not very good sounding.
Oh no, and this is how bad I am. I think I even researched all of that stuff. That might have been the period where he was using boogie amps in the studio.
Maybe.
And because some of them might have even had JBLs or Altecs in them, so they're really bright and nasty, and buzzy. Super buzzy. But then in the track, you don't really notice all that crap on the high end. Yeah, then I think it's Bob. Yeah, Who Are You, Baba? Some of that other stuff. It's like, man, that's not a great sound, but it's fucking rock and roll as shit when you hear it all with the drums, with Keith Moon all over the place,
Yeah.
Right.
But and I will absolutely cop to this. Is really the inspiration for me doing the room modeling in aux was absolutely the track called Axis Bold as Love. And it was a direct result of me sitting with the 4-track tape 20 years before that. Because if you listen to the intro of Axis Bold as Love, depending on what version of the record you had, sometimes they would pan the guitar left and the drums are over here on the right. But what I found was when I listened to the guitar track, it was really brittle and high-endy. And I asked Eddie, he's like, oh, there was probably a Beyer M160 ribbon just right up on the Marshall cabinet. Mm-hmm. So for anyone knows, an M160 is actually a ribbon mic, a dual.
Yeah, good sounding one.
Great, yeah. A lot of people still use them with the combination of the mic, but it was probably that. But the reason when I listened to him, like, that guitar does not sound right. And then you realize, just like the Van Halen shot, Jimmy was loud and sitting right on top of the drums in Olympic. So when you listen to the one mono drum mic that's open, that whole intro, that balloon, that boom, that big, that whole thing, that big, the air and the beat from it is all the drum mic. It was all the Olympic room bleeding into the drums. Cool. And that's when it hit me. It's like, fuck, if you really want to have a great, whether it's through software or whatever, you can't just do close mics anymore. You have to put the air of the room and do the real room that's in, and do the cabinet. And I spent a couple of, I set Marshall cabinets, and I don't think anyone knows this. When I did the room stuff for aux, I put the drums up. The room mics are actually over a drum set. So I arranged the studio like a session. Because if you have an empty room, the reflections are not the same as if you have gear in the room. If you have a carpet down, if you have a drum set, a keyboard, a baffle. So when I was doing the room stuff, it looked like there was a band recording a session. It was insanity. I was literally putting the overhead of a 67 by the drums and then moving the cymbals while I was doing the cab setup for the rooms. And that's insane. I don't know if I've ever told anyone that, but that's literally what was going on. I was capturing the measurements of the room vibrating and then moving the cab at 2 inches, pointing it at the glass, letting it bounce off the drums to get an actual room sound. Because as I was working on the other projects where I got the master tapes, I kept realizing, no, man, the mid-range is coming from the drum mic, or it's coming from bleed on this other. Dude, it was, you can't capture the classic Zeppelin, some of that other stuff that's got no reverb. It's just ambience.
Yeah.
You know, and it can't be, you can't just use a digital reverb. That's not the same thing as 4 speakers comb filtering each other going through a room.
Right.
I know that's super nerdy. Like, I literally sound like a fucking crazy person.
Not to us.
Moving the ride cymbal and the 67 over the fucking drum set.
I'm just going, wow, cool.
That's I know. I love it.
It's weird as shit, man. It's absolutely weird. I can do it for you. This is literally like, I'll turn off the close mics. I just like turning on the room and aux and just leaving it with that. And then you can probably barely hear that, but that distant mid-range thing, you blend a little of that under your mics, and it's like the difference between a good, like especially drums, the difference between a good drum sound and the drum sound that has a few nice mics in the room that beefs it out. I mean, you just listen to when the levee breaks, and it's all about those mics, which again are M160s dangled off that little balcony there.
Right.
So that led to a 10-year search for me to find the best pair of M160s, original silver ones. I have a pair of mid-60s M160s in silver with original European Tuchel connectors. It was pre-XLR, these weird European collectors.
Wow.
So I have a pair of it. And in fact, there's almost none of them. I keep them over here on the desk. But if you guys want to see the difference, you go. So now I'm screwing myself because somebody's going to go to eBay and buy them all because I can't find them anymore.
Yep.
But an M160 by Bayer is typically black. That's not what's on when the levee breaks or Hendrix. That would be this guy.
Right.
Silver with that weird connector. So if you see a silver M160, your buddy's got one thrown in a drawer, just give him whatever he wants for it and buy it. It's the secret Hendrix Zeppelin mic. So I've got one of them. See, this is why I can't go anywhere, Dave. I don't get to leave the house anymore.
V-Man says, yeah, heck, you might have sold me on an aux.
Oh man. Oh dude, I'm sorry. I just please tell your girlfriend or wife that you can throw me under the bus for
I'm
that.
gonna put a link for the aux from Sweetwater in our description. So you guys make sure you check out Sweetwater in the link that we provide. You click on that. I'll also put a direct link to the aux and Universal Audio stuff.
Or if you guys need any, recording interfaces too, the UA stuff's fantastic. So
yeah,
little Apollo or the new one, little Arrow thing, or
you could just
ones.
Big one, yeah. I look at
or buy a Bricasti.
Oh, if you got an extra $7,000 laying around and you want the best digital reverb, hey, John Mayer's got 2 in his last rack. I saw.
Oh,
yeah, and
gotta be like John.
I mean, dude. Well, you know what? The only thing I'm missing is the plane, the 3 Dumbles, and the 25 Rolexes.
Right.
But I will trade that all for one trip to Salsa and Beer around the corner here because I'm pretty simple, man. It comes back to that. Is I'll give you a link for Salsa and Beer. They make the best green enchiladas in the world. They're super spicy. and we haven't even talked about any of these. There's so much other deeper tone crap we can get into because we should continue on the pot values, the pickups. Alnico 2, 5.
Oh man.
Well, we're gonna have to do. We're gonna do a part 2.
We have to do.
We're gonna do a part 2 for that.
There's
Let's
other
do a part 2
about coils and there's a whole lot to this. As I know, I think everyone's probably passed it on their couch by now. I'm sure we've pretty much killed everybody.
Mark's
on
gonna
the
pass
East Coast.
out,
I'm ready for bed.
Yeah.
But
They like for us, it's 9 o'clock. For Mark, it's really late.
Dude. Yeah, I've still got like enough time to catch like a rerun of Better Call Saul.
yeah.
Got one left in me.
Let me tell you guys about the next guest that we've got. I believe the next guest is Martin Kidd from Victory Amps on October 30th. And then from there, we got Josh Friedman.
Yeah.
Friedman.
Voodoo Lab, first ever
Voodoo Lab.
interview. His
Ever.
first ever. The man has never publicly been interviewed, or there's no YouTube on this guy already. You're gonna get crazy LA stories about everything out of Dave, because Dave knows a lot of
we have to he's got to send us wine.
Oh yes, you know he does. The guy has the best taste in wine.
I have to remind him that we have to.
Yeah, we'll have to. I'll text him.
We have to get wine, because otherwise he's going to look down on whatever we're drinking.
Yeah. And for Godfrey, we're gonna have to get you nice some stemware, because if he sees you with like a red Solo cup, he'll lose his mind.
I've heard this already.
Can we do non-stemware? Can we do like small wine glasses? Like
I like stemless glasses.
I like stemless personally.
Stemless is great. They're klutz proof.
It's a little feminine, stemware. Yeah.
Hey, so am I, man. Hey, I'm okay with my femininity. Right?
We were joking around with
long hair going.
too.
That's true.
Get it?
Yeah. I want to make sure everybody please press subscribe, click the bell, press the thumbs up button if you can. And like I said, check out Sweetwater. We get a commission on everything that's bought through there. It helps support the channel. We appreciate that. And James, I'll book you again for another day.
No, I'd love to do it. In fact, you should get actually, there's an amp sitting back there you can't see too. You should talk to Stan Cody at some point too about amps. That's a fun dude. He does all the Fender stuff.
Oh yeah?
He's got some crazy secrets about designing Fender amps too. I know you can see it, but there's a weird amp that doesn't look like anybody's. It's just weird Stan Cody amp. And Dave, I'm sure you've probably you must have run across Stan Cody at some point too.
I know of Stan Cody. Yes, I know.
Yeah.
I don't really know him though.
Yeah, but I'm excited to see you guys get Josh in a corner and make him tell stories of GCXs and pedals and his time here in LA and God, yeah, I
want to talk about wine.
He's going to talk about wine and prosciutto but yeah, it'll be worth it to see how much you can get out of him.
Well, I'm looking forward.
Charcuterie trays will be in order here for the show.
Let's do it. Amol Singh, thank you for all the comments, man. He says, Mark, you're the man. Dave, you're a fucking legend. Did the reactive load box for a 150 200 watt amp question get answered? Dave, when is the high watt
question?
Was there a question? Uh-oh.
Did I miss that?
There's a good chance we missed it. So are you asking about a reactive load box that'll handle 150 to 200 watt amp? Is that what you're saying? I know.
I'm looking.
150. A lot of them will go up to 150. I know the Suhr will take 150 at least.
Yeah.
I don't know about the aux.
Oh no. Actually, my burn-in test was 150 watt triple rec. So I put that on 10 for weeks on end. So I figured, what's the most current production, like actual 6-tube 150 watt beast? I mean, that amp is fucking loud, dude.
Now a 200 watt amp, I don't know if there's anything out there. That's might be pushing a little bit. If you're gonna try to put a Marshall Major into this, probably not a good idea.
Yeah, and Dave knows this too. I mean, really, a good 100 watt Marshall typically can have peaks at when you can get up to 150 peak.
About a 150 peak, 130 somewhere in there.
Yeah, but that's just playing it safe. But yeah, I did use a 150 watt triple rec, a proper 150 watt amp. Anything else outside of that, you're taking a bit of your life in your own hands with that one.
There you go.
It's like running an Ampic SVT into an attenuator. It's like that's just an amp that's all muscle.
Yeah. Deja Blue asked, I see Mark's hair moving. Did he get his AC fixed? I just put the fan on. It was getting hot for whatever reason in this room. But yes, I did get my AC fixed. Thank God. Actually, I didn't repair it. I just got a new AC unit. So
we can talk HVACs too. I just got a new one too. So that'll be a whole other show about the split and the quiet HVAC. Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. I don't want to talk anymore about AC.
Oh, no, dude, no,
Yeah,
it's
he's
really,
had some bad experiences.
the Gree unit I have made my Marshall sound killer. Kidding. That's horrible.
Exactly.
Pick the right unit for your Marshalls.
That's awesome. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody. We've had a great audience tonight. James, you've been awesome. I'll get you definitely set up for another date, and hang on while we say goodbye to everybody. Oh, I think we got one more super chat that I missed.
Yeah.
Waterford Giant says, looking forward to number 2. Thank you.
Well, as long as it's not what's your social security number, you know.
or number 2. I always prefer number 1, but okay, no. But anyway. All right. Everybody have a great weekend. Dave.
Awesome.
Have a good weekend. Happy anniversary, by the way, Dave.
I appreciate everybody hanging
That was
out.
a while ago already.
Was it a while ago? Like a week ago? A couple days?
What, today's it's like 10, 12 days ago.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, time flies.
It does. It's like that. All right. Hang on, James. Take care, everybody.
Yep.